across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now, I was going to be talking about the secret dossier, claiming that billions, 28 billion in total in aid and COVID relief funds have been diverted to terrorists, criminals and hostile states. So asking you to actually ring in about that story in particular. Also, Kemi Badenoch pledging, I think quite rightly, great speech she's planning this morning to remove identity politics from public services, scrapping a key equality duty, which, by the way, isn't going to hit anyone's actual equality rights. It's just going to stop most of the madness that goes on in the public sector, such as we can do that. Social media ban, you name it. But you know what? Another story has overtaken an awful lot of that. If you read the BBC headline, by the way, you wouldn't really think it was that big a story. This is the headline: man taken to hospital with serious injuries after Belfast stabbing. And frankly, I think if you don't live in Belfast at that point, don't have family there, you'd probably, realistically, click on another story, turn the page, switch off, go to another channel, whatever. Well, the next paragraph. A man has been taken to hospital with serious injuries following a stabbing in northern Belfast. One man has been arrested and remains in custody. And you just think, OK, well, you know, nothing to see here. Except there is very much something to see here because, and we can't, obviously, on this station, we cannot show you the video. My attempts to get us to have at least a still photograph, unfortunately, will not pass the rules for media broadcasting at this time of day, or indeed probably any time of day in British broadcasting. But for those of you who have clicked on the show graphic video on social media, you will know just what that Belfast stabbing, in inverted commas, involves. Happened around 10:30 last night in North Belfast when a man, clearly a migrant, he's shouting in a foreign language, quite clearly a migrant, where he is on top of another man with a knife. There is blood everywhere, and he is repeatedly stabbing at the man's head and his neck as the man lies on the ground. People are videoing, shouting to him to stop, calling him a rat, saying to him stop. The point at which he takes the knife and very calmly, after shouting, who knows what, I did not recognise the language, he starts basically sawing. If you were trying to saw a piece of meat, this is what you'd be doing to try and cut maybe the Sunday roast. He starts sawing at this man's neck. This is the point at which people run in. 3 men run to the scene. One of them, with a large wooden bat of some sort, smashes the assailant around the head repeatedly until he stops and falls to the ground. Seconds later, the police arrive on the scene. The man who was the victim of what is quite clearly, as a woman in the video shouts, they're trying to behead him. He's trying to behead him. He's taken to hospital. We do not know at the current time what his status is. I frankly, having seen the video, would think it was a miracle that this man could have survived this attack. His attacker has been arrested and remains in custody. Now, Nigel Farage, other politicians are all saying it is vital that we know the identity of this alleged assailant after his arrest, and also that we know his status. By that we mean, is he in the country legally or illegally? And even if he's here legally, clearly someone who is perhaps not conducive to the public good, I think we can safely say. This is an extraordinary crime, a terrifying crime, and we need to talk about it. I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1 standard network rate message. I also want to hear your thoughts about the billions in taxpayers' money handed over to terrorists, hostile nation states, gangsters in foreign aid and COVID relief loans. But when the secret dossier drawn up by the security services drawn up, it was covered up by the Tory government. Let's face it, billions has gone missing. Your money, my money, could have gone to defence, could have gone to schools, could have gone to the healthcare, could have gone back in our own pockets, in our own taxes, could have been handed back to us or never taken in the first place. What is going on, and why, once this is found out, why is it even legal for them to cover this up? We should have a right to know how our money is spent. I want heads, want a better expression after that horrific attack in Belfast, I want heads to roll. I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up in just a couple of moments, we're going to be talking to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, that's Richard Tice. Right now, joining me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Henry Hill, who's a political editor of The Critic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
This video, you saw this video.
Yeah.
I've seen this video. A lot of people would have clicked on this video. It is horrific. Certainly, the BBC article doesn't remotely do justice to what that video shows.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it really is potentially distressing. So any listeners listening at home should be prepared for that if they choose to watch it. I mean, the hollowness of the written journalism about this so far is really just a reminder of what we've done with the law in Britain about this, because the reason that journalists keep ignoring this stuff, and we've had the demands from Rupert Lowe, for example, to release the personal details of the assailant, the attacker. Now, the reason that that often doesn't happen is because of the Public Order Act, which means that the police can prosecute if they think that something is likely to upset an imaginary racist, not a real racist. It doesn't actually have to provoke somebody real to attack a minority. But if there's an imaginary racist who might be provoked by that detail into attacking an imaginary, hypothetical minority, then they can impose reporting restrictions. So this is why you so often see in print journalism, journalists saying, like, a man with 2 legs and 2 arms attacked, and you're like, well, hold on a minute, I feel like we're missing some salient details. And that only comes out a year or 2 years after the end of the court case. It's ridiculous.
And we heard again, look, we had this big, I mean, we saw what happened in the wake of, Axel Rudakabana and the Southport attacks and the false information that got put out there and the reaction on the streets. For me, I can understand people being angry, whoever it was, but people were very angry at the authorities for the false information. This implication, it was, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing in terms of the information. Do you
remember that attempt to make him the Amazon killer?
Yeah, exactly. It's all the problem is always it's Amazon and the knives, as opposed to the actual young man himself. He was a young man, and it is genuinely quite extraordinary. The way these things are covered, and it is journalistically dishonest, and the people who are going to be lying on, they see stuff online and we're constantly told, well, don't go to stuff that's online because this is going to be, you won't know if it's true, you won't know if it's honest. Well, yeah, okay, so people will go to what they would consider to be, reputable news sites, what the BBC, and if that's what they've got written, I mean, this is an absolutely horrific, barbaric, brutal attack. It has all the markings of, frankly, an Islamist terror attack. When you look at beheadings that go on across Europe, this is, your modus operandi. It defies belief. I mean, this video is very, very shocking indeed. And again, as you say, I think a lot of these things are played down and treated as if they're just another crime, when they are not. We don't know motives. We don't know the identity of the attacker. We don't know the identity of the victim, or even what his status is, whether he's even alive at this current time. But we can see with our own eyes what that horrific act was.
Absolutely, and it discredits the press, right, and journalism, because it is important that we have people who do a little bit of gatekeeping with regards to this stuff, because there are times when unscrupulous people want to exploit the public realm and spread lies and hatred. But that we can't do that if we've lost our credibility, because we're describing this anodyne stabbing. A stabbing, and then people can just go on the internet and see for themselves this horrific assault.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's go to Richard Tice right now. He's the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Good morning to you, Richard.
Well, it's a morning. When you see footage like that and all the implications, it's hard to describe it as good, frankly. I mean, just some of the most horrific images that any of us will ever see.
Absolutely.
And as you're just saying, I mean, that's not a stabbing. That's an attempted beheading by anybody's judgment, frankly.
Yeah.
And very significant things need to happen very, very quickly, Julia. I've put out a tweet. This is exactly the sort of situation where Jonathan Hall Casey, the government's independent reviewer of terrorism, he says that it's vital in these situations that the authorities put out as much information as possible on the identity and status and any history known of the suspect in order to prevent misinformation circulating online. I asked the Prime Minister 2 years ago, almost, specifically about this point about information in Prime Minister's question, well, because
we have a right to know. Well, let me.
We have a right to know. Otherwise, people get very anxious about a cover-up.
Because we have some of that information now. It's just been revealed. The statement we've just got from the police in Belfast: a man in his 30s, believed to be Somalian, has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following a serious assault involving a knife in the Kennard Avenue area of North Belfast on Monday night, 8th of June, shortly after 10:30 p.m. He remains in police custody. The injured man, aged in his 40s, is in hospital where his condition is described as serious. I mean, thankfully, he's still alive. The attack has left the man with significant injuries to his face, neck and back. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly see that from the video. So we could hear from the video the man, the assailant, we could hear him shouting and clearly was not speaking in English or with a British accent. So he is believed to be Somali. Presumably someone has, recognised the language that he was shouting. The downplaying of this well, politically anyway, we know that's going to happen. The BBC, the way they report it, man taken to hospital with serious injuries after Belfast stabbing. What we saw there was clearly, and as someone shouted on the video, an attempted beheading. It's a very different thing from a stabbing.
Yeah, and this is what is leading to the pure cold rage, frankly, that tens of millions of British citizens are feeling about the way we're being treated by the authorities. We're not stupid. We've got eyes. We've got ears. We know what's going on. And we can tell when information is being withheld from us. And the BBC need to take a cold, hard look at themselves in that regard. Because, this is... if he appears to be or is apparently Somalian, well, very, very quickly, we want to know, how long has he been in the United Kingdom? How did he get here? What's his status? Has he got any previous history? And that
he's probably a heart surgeon or a rocket scientist, Richard.
Or a nurse. He could be a nurse, Julia, or he could be a software engineer. But we've all got our concerns, and we need to know this very, very quickly. And the police authorities, they will know they'd know by lunchtime, and they should tell us today all of the history that the authorities know about this individual, because this is just horrendous at every level.
It really is very, very shocking, and we've seen these kind of attacks playing out across Europe. We saw it with Samuel Paty, a French teacher. We've seen it in the streets of Germany, Belgium, others where beheadings. And one of the things that people will be looking at, and we is modus operandi of certain sorts of attacks and certain motives. We don't know the motive. He's been arrested, not yet charged, on suspicion of attempted murder, this man, is whether or not this is terrorist related.
Yes, and our authorities seem to be very, very reluctant to describe these sort of events as terrorism-related. They normally come out and say they don't think it's terrorism-related.
Or it's a mental health issue.
Well, of course, it may well be a mental health issue, not. And whereas other countries, their police authorities make a very rapid judgment and, very rapidly conclude events that they think are terrorism and tell people. And you just have to wonder, why are our authorities so reluctant to define something as what looks like terrorism, terrorism related? And we know why. because they're terrified of the consequences of what they've done, opening the doors to mass immigration of people from cultures that have no bearing with our cultures whatsoever. And regrettably, consequences play out on our streets, and people's concerns grow.
Absolutely. Can I ask you about a couple of the big stories of the day? The Telegraph has revealed that £28 billion, in fact more than that, of taxpayers' money has been handed through either foreign aid or COVID relief loans and other aid programmes to terrorist groups, including ISIS, hostile states, including Russia, companies linked to China, and gangsters. And they were appropriated on a vast scale. The money, though, unable to get it back. Nobody who's done that has been punished. The money was basically taken between 2015 and 2021. Now, this is according to a report, a secret dossier commissioned and produced by the Cabinet Office, but completely and utterly buried by the last government. These sums are huge and could have been either back in our taxpayers' pockets or spent on things rather more worthwhile that wouldn't given to people who wouldn't do harm to our country. But also, crucially, do we not have a right to know this? And once the government was aware of this, should there not be a legal duty on them to make this public?
Yes, of course there should be. And the fact that the Conservative government, senior ministers, must have been involved in the decision to bury that report. We need full transparency. We need to see that report. We need to know which ministers decided to bury it, which civil servants in which departments decided that it was a good idea to give billions of pounds to terrorist organisations and the like. Because if we don't get this level of transparency, all we get from uniparty MPs is this is the soft power of our foreign aid budget. No, it's not. This is utter negligent stupidity, giving our hard-earned billions of pounds to terrorists. And yet it seems that the establishment wants no accountability whatsoever. It's yet another scandal, Julia. I mean, you can't believe it. There's another report in the Telegraph. I've been banging on about this for 2 years. £36 billion is the cost that the Bank of England have blown of quantitative tightening. I mean, these are serious sums of money. This is like the whole defence investment plan budget potential. And this money is just being wasted by our authorities.
I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Look, can I also ask you, so time I know is short, Kemi Badenoch today, big speech talking about pledging to end identity politics in the public sector, saying let's sweep away this rubbish, bring back common sense. She basically is saying that she wants to scrap the public sector equality duty, which has been included in the 2010 Equality Act, a central plank of that, and it requires public bodies to consider how they impact on people with protected characteristics like race and gender in every single decision they make. Now, I know the Reform is committed to getting rid of the Equality Act altogether. Surely you would also agree with, even if not going as far as you, what Kemi Badenoch has suggested.
Well, it's the other way around, isn't it, Julia? Basically, she's realised once again she's on the wrong side of history. Let's remind everybody that she was a minister in charge of this issue just a few years ago. She did nothing, no surprise there. The Tories had 14 years to sort this out. We've said we'll repeal. One of these acts, well-intentioned, completely overdone it. The consequences are for all to see. Different groups of people are positively discriminated against other groups of people. And look,
what protections should you still have? And it's a legitimate concern. I don't think anyone should be positively discriminated for. I mean, other than, if someone's disabled, they need a ramp if they're in a wheelchair, or braille if they're blind. I mean, these are that's called humane common sense. You don't need a law for that. OK. Well, no, you do need a law for that, so people can get.
No, Julia.
Richard,
no.
You do, because actually there are a lot of places, until these laws came in, that people who were disabled couldn't get access to. That is simply not the case. That's why the law was brought in. But there's a difference between all that and the protections, for instance, from someone, not being hired because they're a woman of childbearing age, being sacked because they're pregnant, not being hired because someone doesn't want to hire someone black or gay. So you would if in getting rid of the whole of the Equality Act, would Reform ensure there were still legal protections? So
of course.
And how
but you've got to do, if you're going to do a job, do it properly, make it appropriate so that it's equal for everybody, as opposed to positive discrimination, positive DEI against certain
why
groups.
scrap the whole? Why scrap the whole of the Equality Act?
Because sometimes it's actually easier and quicker to repeal it and start again than try and tweak. It's a bit like a knackered old building. Sometimes it's so knackered, you're better to demolish it and replace it with a wonderful, glorious, gleaming-looking new building.
But you would keep the protections for people not to be sacked or not get a job or be discriminated against because they're gay or black or white or a woman or a man.
Make it equal, make it work. Don't make it positive discrimination in favour of one against other. That's the basic common sense. And I just think that we've got to have the courage to say it's not working in its entirety. We've had 15, 16 years of this. So let's
all right, let me ask you two final questions. I know we've only got you for a few more moments. How worried are you in Reform about Restore Britain taking enough votes, a small share, but enough votes in the Makerfield by-election that will mean that you are going to see Andy Burnham returned as a Labour MP and then, of course, possibly the new Prime Minister of this country?
Not worried at all. Simple as that. Their vote will disappear down to the square root of zip.
You believe so? That's not what the polls are suggesting, or
Julia,
what people are saying on the doorstep.
Julia, why don't you listen to people who are actually on the ground, knocking on doors every day, every week? That's what I do.
You're saying Reform is going to win?
I'm saying it's very, very close. And every vote matters. It's a two-horse race. No one else is relevant. OK. And what would it say if Reform couldn't win this seat? A seat that voted, 2/3 for Leave, voted for Reform councils in the local elections. What would it say, given you're riding high in the polls, 9 points ahead of Labour nationally, if you can't win this seat? Will it come down to your choice of candidate? Will it come down to Restore Britain? What would be? Whose fault would it be? Look, this is a Labour heartland. This is instinctively a strong Labour area. So the fact that we are so close is remarkable. Shows how. Well,
if you want to be the next government, you need to win in areas like this, don't you?
But I'm just repeating, Julia, that this is a Labour heartland seat, and it's very, very close with the person against the person who's described as the King of the North. I mean, he's not, by the way. He's the King of the U-turn, Captain Flip-Flop. But amongst the Labour Party, he's seen as the Messiah, the great man who can replace Keir Starmer and take us on. So look, we're not afraid of anything. Yes, it's going to be close in a Labour heartland where he's got the advantage of being the Greater Manchester Mayor. We're pushing on. And
what's your response to Volodymyr Zelensky? The Ukrainian president has said that the decision by some Reform UK councils to take down the Ukrainian flag was the kind of small mistake that can break a big friendship. What do you say to him?
I say this is Britain and we fly the British flag. I'd be interested to know how many council buildings and local authority and state buildings in Ukraine are flying the Union flag as we speak, Julia.
A fair question. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice there, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Thank you very much for your time. Interesting, Henry Hill, listening to all that. Can we come back to the horrific stabbing in Belfast? The Prime Minister has now commented on this, called it a horrific attack and called it sickening. In new words, I believe that would have come out of a Downing Street press briefing. Clearly getting to grips with the fact that people are not just reading the BBC copy I read earlier. In terms of what Richard Tice had to say, in terms of the, of what we need to be told, do you think that it is vital now the authorities just give full information?
I think it is, because also when the authorities do it, that means that the press can report it. Because as I said before, as important that it is to hold the press to account, here they are actually operating under legal restrictions.
Yep.
The Prime Minister could actually come out and say that it's important the public are kept properly informed and that he's going to repeal or amend those restrictions. But unless he's going to do that, the police giving us that information would allow the press to report it.
It is very important that we don't prejudice any future trial if charges are brought, which would seem very likely. But again, I'm always fascinated by people's wariness. I don't feel like it, so I went to journalism college. It's very clear until charges are brought, and then the guidance seems to have changed. But in terms of the law, until charges are brought and giving information, describing what you can see on a video that is sitting there for everyone to see, is not a breach of the law.
No, well, it's not a breach of the law regarding prejudice, and you're entirely right that we should have things to stop trials being prejudiced.
We can't discuss things if we don't know what we're discussing.
No, this is as I mentioned, the Public Order Act, and you can tell that it's not actually the law, or normally the law, because there's nothing that stops the details of white assailants immediately being made.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right?
As you were pointing out earlier, it's just this idea of sort of, well, you know, we don't want those ghastly British people who go and riot all the time to go and riot.
If the police think a hypothetical person with hypothetical racist views could be hypothetically whipped up, they can act on that basis. It is ridiculous.
It is just extraordinary. Your response to that, I'd love to hear your calls. I'd love to. I said love to. It was the wrong word because it's just extreme. By the way, and we did mention, you know, a by-election in Makerfield. I will later in the show give you a list of all of the candidates. They are free, available everywhere. But coming up, we're going to get your calls. I also want to hear your thoughts on that 28 billion quid of your and my money, basically handed over to terrorists, to Russian and Chinese companies, to criminals. And the government knew about it and they covered it up. I'm fed up to the back teeth of the amount of my taxes are wasted that could either be back in my pocket or could be spent on something useful. Don't tell me you can't afford to defend this country. Don't tell me you can't afford a new radiographer in the local hospital if you're handing 28 billion quid to anyone who asks for it, whether they're from ISIS or from some Russian-backed company. I'm fed up with this. I'm pretty sure you are too. Give us a call about it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. Lots and lots to talk about today. We're going to get to your calls in just a couple of moments. Actually, are we going to be going to calls? We're not. I'm just told we're not going to be going to calls. We're going to be going to a guest and... Oh, no, I'm sorry. It'd be so helpful if someone in my office could tell me what on earth we're doing. Can we just get a guest up for the next couple of moments? But right now, let's go back to Henry Hill, political editor at The Critic. Sorry, with obviously that breaking news, we were a little bit confused about where we are. But just to remind everybody, a man believed in his 30s, believed to be Somalian, has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following a serious assault involving a knife in the Kinnaird Avenue area in North Belfast last night about 10:30. If you've seen the video on social media, it does have a warning of graphic content, and it really is graphic. The man is in police custody. The injured man, aged in his 40s, thank God, is in hospital, where his condition is described as serious. The attack has left the man with significant injuries to his face, neck and back, according to the police. Just to put that image back up, for those of you who are watching, you can see an image now. We've now got approval to a blurred out image of the alleged attacker holding a knife aloft. This is him actually kneeling over the victim of this horrific attack. And on one point, you can see on the video and you can hear the words of the woman filming the video very, very clearly that he is attempting to cut this man's head off, attempting to behead him. Henry Hill, I mean, that's the only image we're able to get approval to show at this time, but absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Yeah, the last time I was talking to you, we were talking about an absolutely horrifying video, so it's becoming something of an unhappy theme. But, and I think when it comes to the ethics of displaying it, of course, anyone can go online and see the video, but of course the poor victim, they're suddenly part of national theatre, right? And I always think whenever we're looking at something like this, it's like, would I want something that was happening to me broadcast to tens of thousands or more people? So the video, this doesn't truly, I mean, the reason that we're showing this particular one, of course, is it doesn't have the victim in it or the blood or anything else, so it doesn't really capture the horror of the video. No. But nonetheless, it is incredible, actually, how distressing that footage is.
It is absolute shock. And I'm usually very wary, actually, of clicking when it says graphic content. But you can't discuss something if you haven't seen it. Keir Starmer has issued a statement. The horrific attack in Belfast last night is sickening. I have absolutely no tolerance for abhorrent scenes of violence like this on our streets. My thoughts are first and foremost with the victim, and I thank the first responders, including members of the public who intervened. Three men running into when they realised what was going on, and then and one of the men just with some bizarre wooden bat with a looks like a I've never seen it, something like that before, but smashing the man repeatedly around the head to make him stop. Now, the Assistant Chief Constable Ryan Henderson for the police in Belfast said that this is a deeply concerning assault. I've declared this a critical incident. We've commenced an investigation to establish a motive. This brutal attack will have sent shockwaves through the community, causing real concern. I want to reassure the local community we are treating this attack with the utmost seriousness. Our investigation is continuing at pace. Officers were on the scene within minutes. We wish to acknowledge the members of the public who strive to save the man from further attack. Their willingness to step forward to help another person shows incredible bravery and community spirit. They also say we are also aware of footage circulating online, and we would strongly urge members of the public not to share or repost these images. Doing so risks causing further trauma to the injured man's loved ones and may impact the ongoing investigation. They said they will get further updates. Certainly, we know Richard Tice, we've just spoken to, Nigel Farage, and I'm sure Kemi Badenoch as well, who's just about to deliver a speech in Westminster, will be iterating the need for us to be given full information about this. Let's go to our calls right now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. We ask you to message in to get in touch regarding this £28 billion taxpayers' money handed to terrorists, and we're not going to get the money back. And the government tried to cover it up, the last Conservative government, when they found out about it. But obviously, you're still welcome to call in on that and what Kemi Badenoch is going to be saying about basically getting identity politics out of the public sector. But no doubt at all, this horrific attack in Belfast is absolutely the top subject today for many of you. David is calling in. He's from Manchester. Hello, David.
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Here we go again. Bad news. I've been retired now a few years from the police, and I saw this coming up to my retirement with the police.
What saw what coming?
Diversity, senior officers unwilling to take responsibility for their actions, and what I'm saying is I'm going sort of back to the Novak murder, and I say this to people: these officers, it's ingrained in them, by these senior officers, these policies.
Yeah.
And what happens is when they come to deal with an incident, common sense goes out the window.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've discussed that for the last week. I mean, what's your reaction to the horrific attack we saw in Belfast last night?
Well, again, Julia, it comes as no surprise because we're having these incidents almost every two months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
Just look, another attack. Yeah.
Here we go. And I've got to say this, as a retired police officer, let's look at the two-party system in this country, the Conservatives, and now we've got Labour. And don't even get me started on Starmer, because as far as I'm concerned, I just listen to the guy, and I just think, what on earth is he talking about? He sends mixed messages. I think he's a dictator. I think it's dreadful, and I only see one way out, and I'll be the first one to admit it. I do. I've joined Reform because I think the two-party system in the UK is finished.
Yeah, but I mean, what are Reform going to do differently? I mean, this attack, we don't know the motive. It's believed that this man is Somali. Yeah. He's been arrested. He hasn't been charged. But what would change?
Well, first of all, it's very simple. This mass immigration, the mass immigration in the country, that's got to change quickly. There's got to be a system in place that controls immigration. It's not a case of being racist, Julia.
Of course, nothing to do with race.
It's a simple fact of life that you've got to control your borders. Yeah. I also believe, you've been discussing it earlier on, the waste of public money that goes into these diversity. It's not just in the police, Julie, it's in the health service.
Oh, it's all over the place. Wasn't there some diversity job being advertised at Hampshire Police?
Absolutely.
It's like 75 grand. 75 grand?
Get rid of a lot of them. What a waste of money.
Completely.
And you know what? And I'm going to finish with this, Julie. You know what? And it really does not. You know all the British public want? They want to get, basically, the British public, most people, they want to work, most of them, they want to go on holiday, do the usual things.
Just want to live their lives.
And you know what they want the police to do? Very simple policing. It's a very simple job. You go out as a police officer and you protect the public. Don't get involved in all this stupid diversity nonsense. What you do, you police without fear or favour, and that's all you do, and that's all the public want. And they want to see police as well. The big one, they want to see police on the ground as well. And
absolutely,
walking, not in cars.
And policing our high streets, not our tweets. I mean, it's not complicated. None of this involves an inquiry or review. Just get back to the job you were paid to do. David, thank you very much. Whenever I speak to an ex-copper, I always think, God, I wish they were still in the force, talking that sense in the force. Daniel is on the line. He's in Epsom. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, Julia. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you know what? These types of heinous crimes have become really common, haven't they, now?
Yeah, as David was just saying.
Yeah, and it always strikes me that the victims tend to be sort of native white British and the attackers are not. And, you don't have to be a genius to spot these patterns. And I just think that mass immigration from the third world is destroying the fabric of our country. It's endangering our people. Women are getting sexually harassed. People are getting stabbed, shot, murdered, killed with screwdrivers, beheaded. Now, a government's job, any government, right, their first duty is the protection of British people, okay? That's their first duty. Now, this particular government and the last have reneged on that duty. They will not leave the ECHR. They will not they refuse to stop illegal immigration, okay? Now, and it's first-hand endangering our people. So we should have some way of getting them out. King Charles should be reading the news this morning and saying, oh, not another attack. I'm going to disband the government, because their inaction is leading to our people dying and British people not being safe on our streets.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've seen this massive string of sexual assaults and rapes, and we're constantly told, people pointing out, they're like asylum seekers, illegal migrants in boats living in hotels or HMOs, and we're just told again and again, nothing to see here. People aren't stupid. I look in my local area. I live in a nice area, but we have some pretty dodgy areas around, as most places in big cities do. And I can tell you, when I look at crime, example, I look at the people who, you know, identified as the local shoplifters, the people who were jumping the barrier at the tube, the people who were causing trouble, the people, you know, riding their bikes along about 30 miles per hour on the pavement, causing people to get out of the way. When I speak to these people, I look at these people, I know who they are. I know who they are. They're easily identifiable, and they are very, 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 very rarely British.
Yeah, I mean, but when this is common knowledge now. The British majority know this, okay? We know that our females are getting sexually harassed, and, you know, that poor Rhiannon White got killed 27 times with a screwdriver.
Stabbed, yeah,
I mean, these stories are just, they're so frequent. Why won't the government listen to what the British majority are calling for? Instead, they ignore us and just gaslight us.
And by the way, the British majority, including people from all races and creeds. I mean, that's the reality. This is affecting everybody.
It's affecting everybody, and it's obvious and clear that diversity is not our strength.
100% not. There's never been any evidence for that statement, by the way. Some of the strong, some of the happiest, most high levels of trust, contented societies, and all the metrics, and richest, don't really do diversity. I wonder why.
Do you know what? I miss this. I miss the country I grew up in. It was high trust. It was much more homogenous. It was much more homogenous. There was less crime. It was safer. It felt like, and it's a shame that my kids aren't going to grow up in the same country.
Do you know the interesting thing is, the crime stats tell you that actually there's less crime now, but it doesn't feel that way.
Oh, I'm talking.
Not my perception at all.
No, people don't even bother reporting crime anymore.
That's the thing. I think that's one of the key things, and the kind of crime anyway. Daniel, I agree with you. I think a lot of people will. Thank you very much for that call. Appreciate that. Henry Hill, political editor, the critic, still listening there. You know, two very different calls, but, you know, to remember actually a lot of the same arguments. It's just this feeling so many people have. It's like, why does this all keep happening, and why is no one willing to do anything about it? None of this is beyond the wit of man.
No, it would make a lot of politicians very uncomfortable, though. Partly,
why?
Well, for the older ones, it's because it would mean, one, admitting they were wrong, and then, as a result of that, having to cop to just how much damage they've done to the country with all of their policies.
So you just put your head in the sand.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to retire soon enough, and then they can be the old, sage, retired Home Secretary who then wants to do all the brave things.
What we should have done.
So, of course, exactly, right? And for the younger ones, it's just that for a lot of them, it involves doing things that will make them feel personally uncomfortable. And I think that actually, if you look at the way that we're governed these days, to a remarkable extent, the overriding principle is, do I, as a politician or as a policymaker, have to do anything that makes me personally uncomfortable? And as long as the answer is no, that's a good policy. The outcomes can be terrible.
And in a different story, but again, it's all related in that sense, in terms of like identity politics and the obsession with these things instead of just treating, doing your job and treating people equally. It's like, when you get the situation, we had Nicola Sturgeon defending putting a double rapist, Isla Bryson, into a women's prison because he wanted to be there, and she just refusing to say he was a man and he shouldn't be in a women's prison, and particularly because he was a rapist, but mainly because he's a man. But once you've said, I believe trans women are women, you then can't question that. And if you believe this whole identity politics and critical race theory and that white people are, and the British history is terrible, our empire is terrible, we're the worst stain on humanity, which is what an awful lot of this mad teaching is in America, and we've imported it to Britain. If you play along with all of that, and then and anyone who's not white is a victim, anyone who's white is an oppressor, if you play along with that, once you see facts that show that that's not the truth, like for instance white working class boys, the lowest achievement in schools and in their family lives. I mean, you can't allow any of the facts to creep in, because then it might bring the whole edifice down.
Oh, exactly. And the other thing about this, of course, is that if your whole point is signalling how pro-diversity you are, then you actually constantly lean towards the most diverse cases.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That means troublemakers.
Absolutely. Right, we're going to go to a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about this plan for a social media ban for under 16-year-olds. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:48 is the time. Let's talk about that social media ban. That isn't a social media ban for under 16-year-olds, but it might be. Government hasn't announced it yet. Lots of things being trailed yesterday. We've got the White House basically telling the Prime Minister, you shouldn't be banning social media for under 16-year-olds. Let's talk about this with Jonathan Taylor, child safeguarding consultant and former detective. 15 years he spent working in child abuse investigations. Frankly, Jonathan, doing the work that you did, so we don't have to know about the horrors of what really goes on. Jonathan, I really appreciate you joining us.
Hi, Julia. Good to speak to you again.
Now, think about this. OK, a lot of people are saying, massive public support, particularly from parents, for some sort of social media ban. We were told the government was going to wait and see what happened at the end of their consultation, see what happened in Australia with their social media ban for under 16-year-olds, and see what worked. Now, that ban clearly hasn't worked the way it's been constituted because, most under 16-year-olds are still on social media and haven't got that happening. Lots of talk about getting the tech companies to take action on certain aspects, people having to ID themselves as below 18 or above 18. What do you think would work? Do we need a full ban? Like, just you cannot get onto any social media under 16, or what do you think would work?
The thing that will work is awareness, education, and more parental involvement. That's the initial bit to keep a child safe or a young adult safe. There's so much that parents could do through the modem, through the router, through the device, and then by being involved with their own children, you can then have parental controls, which are very easy to set up. And I was listening to someone this morning talk about this, but the big problem we've got with parents isn't the fact they don't want to be busy people. Well,
also, they often don't, they literally don't know. Look, I'm married to someone who works in tech. I just leave all of that side of things to him. It's like, it's not on my to-do list. I do everything. You're in charge of that. But a lot of parents don't know, and frankly, they might be easy to put on. I bet they're also very easy to take off by a savvy 16-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. We've seen that with the Australian ban. So all this talk about social media bans, etc., etc., I'm not a massive fan of it. However, because I still look at the fact that 90% of users, young users, are actually going to enjoy the experience, which is why a lot of charities have come out to say, actually, we've got to be very careful here what we're taking away from children.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be the possibility of exploitation, and that's where parenting has to come in.
Well, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Because when people identify social media as a problem, there are different problems. There's, predators, and we've seen this stuff about trying to use the tech to stop kids being able to take and send nude photographs of themselves to protect them against that issue. I have a funny feeling that ain't going to be the full solution. So there's the predator issue. There is also they're spending an awful lot of time, people call it doom scrolling, just constantly going through, and there are algorithms which just pop up another video, pop up another video. I mean, God, they do it on my social media feed, and it's like, why on earth do you think I'd be interested in this nonsense, and why is it playing on my phone? But there's also, some of the stuff that they're seeing, looking at either violent pornography, horror videos, beheadings, like attempted beheading we've seen in Belfast last night. They're also spending, frankly, an inordinate amount of time looking at absolute nonsense on TikTok and Instagram and goodness knows what, just when they could be doing something more useful instead. And there's also the aspect of the hours that young people spend, like adults, on social media, is time they're not talking to another human being, talking to their family, playing sport, being active, So, but how? I mean, what's the solution? You can't tackle all of those with just one new law banning something, can you?
No, I mean, just from what you said there, if you take everything you said there, it shows the complication or how complicated this is of saying, well, we just ban social media. First things first, they don't actually say what social media is.
Good point.
And then you go down to, well, what are the possibilities of exploitation? I personally feel now we've gone on from things like online stranger danger, which has always been talked about. The big issues for me are recommended algorithms, monetization, And of course, you've got things like Meta saying, well, they've taken down 170 million scams. So these companies are doing a lot.
Yeah.
But the problem we've got with the government at the moment going, we're going to ban this, we're going to find, is no one's being fined here. You know, the Online Safety Act came in, but no one's been fined. You know, they've actually tried to put fines out there, but you're not going to be able to find the likes of the companies in America or in China, etc., which is why you've then got the US coming out saying, well, hang on a minute, before you do that, we've got to protect our own technology companies.
Well,
so
indeed, and in America, look, these are big tech companies are invariably, American-based, and we also know they're very big donors to American political leaders, and of course, the tech bros were all front row. Where they were sitting in front of the Trump's cabinet, for goodness sake, at his second inauguration, which is very telling. I think we can safely say. There's no doubt we want to take the tech bros, but the reality is there are issues when people talk about safety. Now, I'm someone who's always, quite conservative with a small c on these things. Yeah, we should go safety. Since lockdown, when we knew that actually constantly the government was not, whether one agrees or disagrees with it, but we know for a fact from Matt Hancock's WhatsApps and all the investigations that most of the policy making was not based on evidence or any actual knowledge. It was just like, she's done it in Scotland, we'll do it. Let's put our kids in masks for 8 hours. When people talk about something being done for safety reasons, I say my little spidey senses get up and I think, is this really going to protect us, or is this something else? Is it going to be something that could later on be used for nefarious means? And there is a real concern that if kids have to identify themselves as children, if there is some way of identity, even there's this double identity thing where it's blind, we're told, people don't trust that, and they think this is just a little route towards, digital ID. That's a legitimate concern, isn't it? Oh, have we lost?
Yeah, without a doubt, because as you say, am I still?
No, we've got you. Sorry, I don't. You disappeared for a second.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is the bigger picture, which is why a lot of people are saying, well, you're banning it. What are you going to bring in place? If you try to ban absolutely everything, or the companies, the tech companies check every single image, then you're going to have the issue of, well, this is like Big Brother, and people are worried about that. So you're quite right in what you say about they use the word safety, because everybody would say anything that will hopefully keep a child safe, we must do. But hang on a minute, it's too complicated. It's not being spelled out correctly. Social media is just two words put together, but it does explain all the issues, how a child or young person is using the internet. That's a big issue.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you. Jonathan Taylor, child safeguarding consultant, former detective involved in those child abuse investigations. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work in the police force, certainly, and thank you for talking to us. Apologies there for the quality of that line. We're going to take a quick break, get Henry Hill's thoughts on that in just a moment. This is Talk.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:58 is the time. We're going to be heading back to the news in just a couple of moments. Loads more to talk about. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, is currently giving her big speech about scrapping public sector equality duty. But I do just want to come back to you, Henry Hill, political editor at The Critic, about this conversation with Jonathan Taylor about the social media ban. Massively popular. Keir Starmer definitely wants to do something of this ilk, doesn't he? Because he thinks it's going to be popular with parents and with voters. And legacy, we'll talk about showing his dynamic. But whenever the word safety is mentioned, I'm always like, what are you doing it for?
It basically, I share your instincts, because essentially it's a way of getting people to switch their critical instincts off, right? Because it's for the safety of children. Surely you've got to be in favour of the safety of children. And your argument is go, of course. Yeah. And then you wave something through. The thing about something like this is always the practicalities, right? We've already seen this with the Online Safety Act. Theoretically, it means that you now require proof of identification to see adult content. Do you actually require it? No. You need a VPN, which you can get for free on the internet. Now,
by the way, 14-year-old boys could get those already.
Well, exactly. So who do I back to outmaneuver the other on the question of the internet? Gen Z or Gen Alpha or whoever we're talking about now, the young people, or the ministers? Yeah. I think it's the young people.
Who, by the way, can't understand any of this stuff at all. Least of all, Liz Kendall, who's apparently in charge of it. Coming up to the top of the hour now, we're going to get the news, going to have more on all the big topics, including that horrific stabbing in Belfast. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, we are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very much appreciate you joining me. Lots to talk about. And so whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much for your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, of course, we are going to be talking more about that horrific stabbing and what appears to be an attempted beheading in Belfast last night. The suspect has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and is in police custody. And the man who was the victim of that horrific attack is in a serious condition in hospital. We'll talk about that more in just a couple of moments. Also, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about that secret dossier, which claims that £28 billion in aid and COVID relief funds were diverted to terrorists, criminals and hostile states under the Tories. But when a Cabinet Office dossier basically identified it, it was covered up. Do we not have a right to know where 28 billion quid of our taxes have gone, especially when it's gone to ISIS terrorists, to Russian companies, Chinese-supported companies and the rest? Plus, Kemi Badenoch has listed a speech she's just finished in the last few moments now, taking questions in Westminster. She has pledged to remove identity politics from public services by scrapping a key equality duty. That's in particular, well, basically, it's this rather strange idea, which is that basically every single thing that public servants do needs to be addressed on whether or not it's actually going to have an impact on people with protected characteristics like race, like gender. Basically, stops them from doing anything sensible and leaves aside just basic, simple treating everyone equally and common sense. Plus, multiple women have accused the billionaire former West Ham co-owner David Sullivan of abusing his power and preying on them for sex while he owned the Daily and Sunday Sport papers. He has denied any wrongdoing. Before we go to my guest, I need to tell you about also, this is not a happy news day, folks. Co-op Academy School in Manchester went into lockdown this morning after 3 people were stabbed in a serious incident. 6 police cars were at the scene in Blackley, along with a helicopter hovering above as an ambulance treated victims. Students sheltered in their classrooms, parents said, as police responded to the incident. That was at Co-op Academy in Manchester. As soon as we get any more details on that, we will bring them to you here at Talk. Love to hear your response to any of the big stories we're talking about, particularly that stabbing and attempted beheading, it would appear, in Belfast, but also this £28 billion of taxpayers' money handed over to terrorists, Russia and who knows what else. And indeed, what Kemi Badenoch has had to say, wanting to end identity politics in the public sector. Get in touch. Any of those you can get in touch on 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Joining me right now is political editor at The Critic, Henry Hill, joining me for the whole show. Henry, just your initial reaction, actually, to news from this academy, this school, presumably a secondary school in Manchester. We don't know if the 3 people who were stabbed, as reported, were pupils or teachers or staff or a combination of the two. But certainly a very serious incident. Yeah,
what reaction can you possibly have? It's just absolutely horrifying. We heard about this in the last few minutes. We spent the first third of this show talking about a horrific attack. Yeah. Horrifying footage, really unpleasant subject. Already enough to make this a really, as you say, miserable news day. And now this one comes ticking in. And we were talking earlier about the fact that people feel that this country's getting worse and more dangerous despite the statistics. This is why, right? I don't think there's ever been a point in British history when I was growing up, or maybe when you had several of these nationally significant knife attacks.
I don't remember any of these things, and I was involved in news. I was always interested in news.
Right, exactly. Like this sort of attack, like day after day after day, 2 on the same day, 2 in the same morning, right? I don't think that happened before.
I don't remember any stabbings at schools either. People had punch-ups. Right. I'm sorry, there's a case in my where I live. There's a case in the local comprehensive. Not the one that Jihadi John went to. The other one. Yeah, but you can laugh. But that's the reality in my local schools. I live in a nice area in North London. The local comp, a 12-year-old boy was stabbed. 2 14-year-old boys were arrested for that crime last year.
It's absolutely shocking. And I think the thing is, when people say, oh, violent crime is down, right? It's because we don't categorise it adequately. What they mean is there's fewer people having punch-ups outside pubs, right? Closing time, two lads have a bit of a knockabout, that's one bit of violent crime. A vicious knife attack or a stabbing in a school, that's violent crime, right? They're not the same.
They're not the same.
You know, if you've got 3 fewer pub punch-ups but 1 more school stabbing, violent crime is down.
Yeah, it is. It's just extraordinary. I mean, whenever we've talked about, you know, any sort of a school attack in America, and the idea that children have to have drills in their schools in America on what to do if there's a shooter who comes in, and I'm also, how does anybody take their kids, leave their kid at the school gate? And go off to work and just hope that their kid comes back alive, you know. But we're getting to that point. We've had other incidents near schools or in schools in the last year. As you say, I mean, it's just extraordinary. But look, let's get your reaction to that. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Does anyone, seriously, certainly around my age or Henry's age, I mean, did anyone ever remember there people being stabbed at school? I just don't think that was a thing. But let's go back to this horrific case of this this horrific crime in Belfast. I was mentioning earlier, just extraordinary copy in the BBC, bbc.co.uk, the biggest news website in the country, one of the biggest in the world, actually. A man has been taken to hospital with serious injuries following a stabbing in North Belfast. One man has been arrested and remains in custody. I mean, barely any detail at all. You know, they've got some MPs saying the incident is quite shocking. And later on, they talk about a gruesome knife attack. But, I mean, it is quite extraordinary. I mean, if you haven't seen the video, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't recommend that you do. We have to see the video because I need to know what we're talking about. And it is highly gruesome. And if it's on social media, the police have asked people not to continue sharing it because of the distress it would cause the victim and his family. But a man who is now, we're told, believed to be Somalian, a man in his 30s, arrested, suspicion of attempted murder after this serious assault with a knife. He is seen straddling this man, repeatedly stabbing him in the head, in the neck. He sustained head, neck and back injuries, and the man is now in serious condition in hospital. Extraordinary that he's alive, frankly, looking at that video. And then, while someone's videoing, shouting to him to get off him, calling him a rat, this man, he shouts some words. I think that's how they've been able to identify that he was Somalian. He certainly wasn't British. It certainly wasn't an English. He certainly wasn't speaking English, and it certainly wasn't a British accent of any sort or a UK accent. He then proceeds very, very calmly to basically attempt to just saw this man's head. And at this point, someone in the video says, you know, he's trying to behead him. 3 men go forward. One man with a wooden stick with a round, like a bat or something, just smashes this man around the head. Incredibly brave. I want to shake that man's hand. He'd probably save that victim's life. Bashing him around the head repeatedly until he falls to the ground. And then they wrestle with him. The police arrive within seconds of this. But just a horrific scene. And Henry Hill, I mean, you know, it takes quite a lot to shock us these days, but people are being asked not to share this video. Look, we can put up, I think we can put up a still, we can put up an image of the alleged attacker for those who are watching on YouTube. If we could actually get that up, that would be great. But it's blurred out, but he's covered in blood, his hand is covered in blood, he's got blood spatters on his clothing, and he's holding the knife that he's been, allegedly, I have to say at this point, cutting this man's head off. I mean, this is absolutely horrific. No wonder we've got a statement from the Prime Minister, even he. The horrific attack in Belfast last night is sickening. I've absolutely no tolerance for abhorrent scenes of violence like this on our streets. My thoughts are first and foremost with the victim, and I thank the first responders, including members of the public who intervened. There's been a demand from Nigel Farage and others that we get full information about this man as soon as possible, particularly his status. Is he in the country legally? Why is he here? Why is he on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel slightly conflicted about this sort of footage because on the one hand, it is important that we have access to the truth of what happened. We were talking, this BBC report, if you read it, I don't want to repeat your excellent little speech from earlier, but like, you wouldn't think anything of it, right? You'd think it's some local crime story. But on the other hand, there's an innocent man in that video who I wouldn't want to be seen like that by millions of people if that were to happen to me. So I would say it has been seen, and I would urge listeners, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe think twice about watching it. But it is extraordinarily. It's distressing very differently to the video that we were talking about last week. This one is much more visceral, but you see a lot when you're a news journalist, right? You see an awful lot of footage and stills and stuff, and I think it's a combination of the barbarity of the violence, but also the fact that it's on a suburban street. There's something about when you see footage like this from another part of the world. Obviously, it's not morally less bad, but it's still like, oh, okay, that's somewhere over there. It's seeing it somewhere where I grew up. Yeah. That's so weird, like discombobulating about it.
Yeah, I
adds an extra layer to the horror.
Absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. Do you know what? There was so much more we were going to be talking about. And then both these stories appear in the news. Kemi Badenoch has just been asked. She's at a press conference at Westminster. She's giving a speech, and she has said that she was horrified by the Belfast incident. I say we don't know the motive as yet. We don't know the full identity of the alleged attacker, but we'll bring you any detail on that. I'd appreciate your calls on this. So 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. As I said, calls are charged the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Let's talk about what Kemi Badenoch has had to say today, because she's pledging to drive identity politics out of public services like the police, schools and hospitals. This all comes, of course, after the horrific murder of Henry Novak and the police response. And again, this time last week we were discussing, I mean, nothing else for the next few days, the horrific body cam image that was released last Monday night last week. But she says she's spoken out. I mean, we know that the public has had a very good response to what Kemi Badenoch has had to say. Lots of criticism of Nigel Farage. I thought his initial video was absolutely bang on about we should have, pure cold rage about what happened to Henry Novak, not just the murderer, but also the treatment by the police, and the view that actually, these DEI, this diversity, equity, equality stuff, and diversity, DEI, and inclusion. I mean, it's such nonsense. It's these meaningless, stupid words. No wonder I can't remember them. That how much this is impacting the ability of the police to do their job, and the NHS to protect, their nurses from being watched by get into their bra and knickers by a predatory man. The most basic stuff. And Kemi Badenoch says she wants to end it in the public sector. She wants to do that, she says, by scrapping the public sector equality duty. That's part of the Equality Act 2010, brought in by Labour. She said that's part of the problem. She says she wants to sweep away this rubbish, bring back common sense. She says whatever the original intention of the duty, in practice, she says, it has become a minefield that exposes almost every public decision to legal challenge and leads to ludicrous outcomes. So it requires public bodies to consider how they impact on people with protected characteristics like race and gender, bearing in mind the one thing that's absolutely not a protected characteristic is being white. Certainly a white man. I think I come under woman. Mm-hmm. You don't, yeah. I mean, you have a straight white woman. I come under woman. You straight white man. Frankly, mate. No one cares about you. That's for sure. Now, of course, we need equality laws to make sure someone doesn't get turned down for a job or not allowed to rent a flat because they're gay or black or disabled or something like that. But it's clearly gone too far. We had an absurd situation, something that she has mentioned, where we had a convicted terrorist, Sayab Abu. He successfully sued the government last year. He and other convicted terrorists were segregated in prison after the brutal attack on prison guards by Hashem Abedi, the brother of the Manchester Arena suicide bomber. And basically they decided to segregate potential attackers who were Islamist terrorists. But this was claimed it would breach the public sector equality duty because they were all Muslim.
Yeah.
Madness.
It is insane. And actually, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to try and make a slightly better case than Richard Tice for why you should repeal the Equality Act, right? Because actually, all of the things that you were talking about, the perfectly legitimate uses for equality legislation, making sure that public buildings are accessible to disabled people, making sure that an employer can't refuse you a job for being black or a woman. Do you know what all of these things were? They were all illegal in 2010, before the Equality Act came in. Right? This was one of the puzzling things about the Equality Act. Labour had been in power for 13 years. They brought it in a few months before they left office, basically as a trap for the Tories. And a lot of those earlier pieces of equality legislation, they were very sensible. The Equal Pay Act, passed by Barbara Castle in the 70s, focused on the same job right? None of this equal value voodoo.
Which is rubbish. The idea that emptying the bins at 4 a.m. is the same as being a dinner lady at 1 a.m. or p.m.
Barbara Castle explicitly said that when she passed the Equal Pay Act. She was like, equal value is a nonsense. And yet, when you bundle it all together into the Equality Act, you create these very vague statements that basically give public officials licence to invent new equality law all of the time. So actually going back, getting rid of the public sector equality duty, a very good start. But honestly, identify the important areas where you do need equality protections, and then just have very specific legislation, the way we used to, guaranteeing those protections. Don't pass. The Equality Act is an example of what I consider to be a terrible type of legislation, the Nice Word Act.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It's extraordinary, isn't it? By the way, just an update on that school, the Co-op Academy in Manchester. It report is actually that 3 pupils were stabbed.
Oh, God.
And the police said that a schoolgirl has been arrested. But the victims' injuries aren't believed, thank goodness, to be serious. But crowds of parents, understandably, arrived outside the school as families waited to take their children home. I mean, quite extraordinary. 3 people stabbed in a serious instance, 6 police cars at the scene, helicopter at the scene, students sheltering in their classrooms. At the Co-op Academy in Manchester, school went into complete lockdown. The fact that we even know what that means because of what's been going on in American school shootings, but a schoolgirl has been arrested. I mean, what on earth is going on? What on earth is going on?
I mean, obviously, when we've only got this many, this little detail about the story, it's difficult to know exactly what's motivated this particular case. But do you know what I'm curious about? Say it's a school.
Anyone gets stabbed in a school.
Yeah.
There we go. That deserves the phrase. What on earth is going on?
I wasn't disputing that for a moment. I was just saying, explaining why I couldn't give you an answer.
Yeah.
But what I am going to be quite interested in is, you say that it's a school girl that's been arrested for this, right? Now, do you remember where adolescents? All of the times that we were told that this entirely fictitious case needed a deep contemplation of the evils of boys in schools, right? I want to see what Sir Keir Starmer has to say about the fact that it was a young woman who tried to perpetrate this crime.
Well, allegedly. Well, again, the thing is, with news articles now, I don't know if it's a girl or not, because it may be a boy who identifies as a girl, and we're all told we have to refer to them as a schoolgirl. I don't know. I'm not saying that is the case.
No, that is true.
I'm not bringing it up. I'm just saying I can't trust anything I read in mainstream media anymore.
I mean, I hadn't thought of that. That's a perfectly good point.
That's the thing. I certainly can't trust any government anymore. And I have to say, I found this utterly extraordinary, that £28 billion, according to a Cabinet Office dossier, this is something that's been leaked to the Daily Telegraph, but £28 billion of our money, our taxpayer, people have gone out every day, got up in the morning, done their job, often not enjoyed their job very much, and not paid well, they pay taxes, and that money has gone to, it will turn out, 28 billion of it, over the period of 2015 to 2021, over a 6-year period, to, basically into the hands of, according to the report, people wishing Britain harm. We're looking at terrorists, including Islamic State, ISIS, millions going to Russia, a hostile nation state, to companies that have basically got close links with the Chinese military. We're looking at payments going to gangsters or organised criminals. That money cannot be recovered. No one who took it is being punished. How on earth this money was handed over is quite an extraordinary thing. They basically just took advantage of an awful lot of these very lax, handout schemes, not just during COVID, but others. But the report was commissioned by security officials in 2023. It was going to be shared with mandarins across the government, including in the Foreign Office. And after it emerged that this amount of widespread fraud and abject lack of control over how our money was spent, they basically decided that the report was so damning, they decided not to disclose it. Now, who the hell do these people think they are? I would say we have a legal right. National Audit Office should have been given this document. We need to know where is your money spent? One of the many reasons I wanted to leave the EU was because the EU, I think even to this day, I don't think they'd had their accounts signed off for, 20 years at the point in which we left or voted to leave, because so much, there's billions swilling around, hundreds of millions, and it just gets slopped here, slopped there. They don't spend it well. It's people's hard-earned money. They don't get it from nowhere. And they didn't really care. And there is so much corruption in the EU, and clearly an awful lot of corruption here. And no one cares. No one's being prosecuted. We're not trying to get the money back, and they're just going to cover it up. Are we supposed to just put up with that?
I mean, I don't know if it's sort of optimism thinking it's corruption as opposed to incompetence. The thing about both of these is, it's not surprising if you had to pick two things where this kind of thing was happening, COVID and foreign aid, because they're both places where the government was shoveling money out of the door without regard really to how it was spent. Now, one of those, they're both problems, is much more defensible than the other. In COVID, they were having to react very quickly to unexpected circumstances. They'd shut down the economy. Obviously, you should police this, but some mistakes will be made. Foreign aid, on the other hand, was simply running for years, right? And it's because they had a spending-based target, not an outcome-based target. The department simply had to make sure it spent the money to hit the target, right? And there's an amazing story in Rory Stewart's autobiography where he says that he identified some money that was going to a deeply problematic group, shall we say, in Afghanistan.
Because he was like not high consul, we had some sort of role running a province in
that was in Iraq, I think. But he had a lot of experience in Afghanistan. He'd walked across it, and he said, right, this is British government money going to this group, which is actually linked to terrorism. And basically, the Foreign Office completely killed off any attempt by him to stop that money. And it later turned out, of course, when he was proven right, and this group did end up the government didn't acknowledge it done anything wrong. It just quietly, eventually, 2 years late, did what he said. So there was deep groupthink. I think the only note of caution I have about the idea that this sort of document should be mandatorily public is you need to make sure, if that's the case, that it's still commissioned, right? Because as far as I'm aware, this is the kind of thing that a government or a civil servant, it doesn't get produced automatically. It has to be commissioned and looked into. So make sure, if the National Audit, maybe give the National Audit Office actually the right to initiate its own audits of government accounts without ministerial sign-off.
Well, yes, but I mean, goodness me. I mean, they need to know about it in the first place, don't they? Look, let's take a quick break. There's so much more I want to talk about. I mean, we're going to get to it a little later, actually, just very briefly. A review report suggesting from a think tank that university is a waste of money. Half of graduates earn below the average wage 5 years now. After just finished uni, you might be, I was waitressing, things that, you're not earning a great sum of money. But 5 years after graduating, half of graduates are earning below the average wage. And there's lots of concern about the debt-trap degrees, degrees that aren't really worth the paper they're printed on, and people coming out with a load of debt, mounting interest from the day they take out that loan. It's absolutely horrific, the trap we're putting youngsters into for getting very little. And then they're not actually, getting a better job than they would otherwise have.
No, I think one of the biggest problems with our current system, and it will be very tricky to fix, is the fact that because we've overproduced graduates, right, at taxpayers' expense, it means that suddenly for employers, it costs an employer nothing to whack a 2-1 on a job description, which when I left uni, wouldn't have required it, or when you left, wouldn't have required a degree. And what that means is that somebody who might previously have left school at 18 or 16 even, gone into work, started earning straight away, built up some skills. Instead, they have to go on a debt treadmill for 3 years, emerge with 40 grand's worth of debt, which immediately starts climbing, and then maybe they only end up with the same job they'd have got anyway. I
mean, I do think, and that's the big work. But with that massive big debt, and you're paying it off from a very low income as well, well below average income. In fact, I think you're paying it off around the minimum wage, living wage. 11:25 is the time. Just to give you a few more words from Kemi Badenoch, which she's been saying at this press conference in Westminster, giving her speech about sort of political, nonsense, identity politics, but speaking about the video of that horrific attack in Belfast. She said, I'm absolutely horrified. It is a horrific attack. I haven't heard anything about who the attacker might have been, she said, but I think a lot of people will start wondering yet again, is this someone who should not have been in our country? Have there been failings around our borders? She said, I would urge the police to bring the facts out as quickly as possible so that we can get some clarity. We're going to go to a quick break. I'd love to get your calls on next. To give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Father Callaghan was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Let's go to your calls now. Let's go to Steve, who is in Scunthorpe. Hello, Steve.
Hello. Good morning, Julia.
Hi. Hello. What do you want to say, my darling?
I want to talk about the unreporting of by the BBC.
Yeah. On this Belfast attack.
Yeah. First thing I'd like to say is I'm surprised the man who was clubbing the Somalian over the head wasn't arrested for racial aggravation.
I mean, we can joke, but yeah.
Yeah. But what I was going to say, last week I watched a lot of the protests for the killing there in Southampton.
Yeah.
The things I did notice that during the protests at the police station, nobody had face coverings of.
Yes.
Nobody was, you know, then they had a couple of signs. And then I watched later on the so-called riots. Now, to me, they weren't riots. They were protests. There was things between the police. They threw a couple of bins and that. They didn't come armed. They didn't come face covered. They were pretty. And I watched that police line, what they were doing. People were standing there and they're hitting them with their shields. I mean, I'm not saying it's all one way.
No, but it wasn't one way. People were throwing bins. They were throwing bricks. They were the people who committed violence against peace were quite rightly arrested.
Oh yes, I agree entirely. But to me, that wasn't a riot. That's not like
no, exactly. Well, it would have if it was Black Lives Matter. It would have called a largely peaceful protest, wouldn't it?
That's what I mean, and to say that contrasts the BBC's coverage of this incident now in Northern Ireland. I think it's totally, it's totally too clear.
I mean, again, the information, they would have seen the same video that I've seen, and I would encourage people not to see. I think we can put a still up, can't we, of the image of the man who has been arrested. And we can blur that. We can put that image up while we're talking about this case, rather than Kemi Badenoch. But certainly that we. They would have seen the image. They knew what had happened, and to describe this as just a stabbing, as if it's like, oh, we just someone's been stabbed. I mean, not that, by the way, stabbings on our streets anywhere in the United Kingdom should be considered a normal thing. Steve, thank you. No. Yeah, no, go carry on. What do you want to say?
No, just saying. I mean, me joking first off about that man not being arrested. That's not beyond the realms of impossibility.
And that's where we feel right now. Thank you, Steve. Bernie is in Essex. Hello, Bernie.
Hello, Julia. Lovely to speak to you. It's a shame it's such a depressing circumstances, really. My big concern with this, and I'll base it on conversations I've had over the last couple of years with one of my brothers who's been in Northern Ireland for about 30 years. People have forgotten the paramilitary undertones that still exist in the province, and they've experienced exactly the same issues that we have on the mainland with mass migration. The economy in Belfast city centre, hotel trade, cab trade has been decimated. Campuses like Queen's University became very unsafe for people like my niece directly because of migrant issues. Now, he has said to me on a number of occasions that because of the way that migrants have been managed in Northern Ireland, a number of people have been openly saying for probably 2 or 3 years now, what are the paramilitaries going to do about this? Because they are getting to the end of their tether. And I don't think that people in England, Wales and Scotland, particularly, those under 35, 40, can remember just what it was like when that kind of activity. And that is my real concern.
Yeah.
Because and I think, and this is not a personal wish, but I think it's the reality of life.
No, I agree with you.
I think depending on the identity of the victim, this could go one of two ways. One of which is potentially really, really worrying.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there was a certain extent with the paramilitaries that actually they, there was it's organised crime, and it was also, in its own horrible way, policing of Northern Ireland. But, they were the only ones who were committing crime, not anyone else. They were in charge of things. But things have got out of control in Northern Ireland. There's no doubt at all on this front.
They have undoubtedly. My niece had to stop using public transport when she was doing her teaching degree at Queen's because it just simply became too dangerous to walk around the campus as a young woman.
Because of what? Because of what danger?
Well, because you've got hordes and hordes of young men, illegal migrants or people who've been put up in hotels, who would just basically follow them round. And follow them round, sexual commentary, sexual harassment, attempted sexual assault, exactly the same issues that we've had and what we get over here. But the potential consequences of this, if, for example, if the victim is a local Northern Irish person, I really, really worry about what could kick off because people don't understand that paramilitary mindset. I was a cop in London for 30 years. I policed during the 80s, 90s, 2000s, before the ceasefire. And it was bad enough in London. It was even worse in the province. People I don't think people understand. And I wonder if that might have driven the Prime Minister to come out straight away and acknowledge this as an horrendous attack.
But yes, to actually try and get ahead of it because they've often been behind it. I think that's a very valid point, but I really appreciate all these people with so much sort of personal expertise, ex-coppers. But we're going to talk to another one of those up next, a retired senior police investigating officer, Colin Sutton, about this and numerous other cases. We're going to go to a quick break. This is Talk. Do get in touch. We'll get your number, your calls on air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. Well, let's welcome Colin Sutton to the show. He's a retired senior police investigating officer. He's also the Flight Police and Crime Advisor for Reform UK. Thank you for joining us, Colin.
It's a pleasure, Julia.
I wish it was under happier circumstances. I want to talk to you about various other stories in the news, and particularly this 28 billion quid and diversity officers and everything. But got to start, obviously, with this horrific stabbing incident in Belfast, which appears to involve a man who appears, we're told, believed to be a Somali. Thankfully, currently he's arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, appearing to not just repeatedly stab on video neck, face and body of a man lying prone on the ground, but also to try and basically saw off his neck. Thankfully, civilians, local people just pulled him off, hit him with a wooden bat to try and get him to stop before police arrived. And the man is in hospital with serious injuries. I mean, one hopes he survives. What do you make of this case and the fact that we found out so quickly that he's believed to be Somalian? Both we've got Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch for Reform and the Tories saying it's important that we know not just this man's name but also his status in the country, because he's clearly not speaking English when he's involved in this alleged attack.
Yeah, I think all power to the PSNI for getting the information they have out there quickly. I think it's important when these things happen, and they're happening all too frequently, sadly, aren't they, that we do have openness, because it's speculation and misinformation can run rife on social media, and that causes more problems in the long term than just being truthful and open at the start. Yeah. And it's a good start to say his age and the fact that he's not a British national, that he's believed to be Somalian. Yes, we need his immigration status as well at some point. But it might actually be that the police don't actually know that yet. These things. It's interesting. We all. This is such a big, massive, and frightening kind of event. Yeah. We all think, it's terrible, which it is, and it's shocking, and it's going to have political ramifications. The officers that are investigating it will be investigating it the same as they do any other attempted murder. And so the first thing that they're doing is to try to make sure that they retain and preserve all the evidence that's there at the scene and on him. So it was just standard things were being done.
But again, that's the sort of stuff the officers are doing, the sort of thing you would have done when you were a senior police investigating officer. But but also, we've got, the senior echelons. They'll immediately, that would have gone way up to the top, going, police chief, and call in the press office. What do we say about this? And as my guest Henry Hill was pointing out a bit earlier, the likelihood of them going, well, will there be a concern about, there's going to be rioting? What will the public reaction to be? What do we say? What do we give out about this information? And a lot of that will be actually based on what the public know already. So it's not like post Southport where people are putting out stuff that's completely untrue about the then alleged killer. But we can see the video for ourselves, and millions of people will have watched that absolutely foul, gruesome video, and they can hear the voice of the man doing it. Is there an element where the police chiefs are sort of dragged kicking and screaming into giving us that information because they can't get away with not doing it anymore?
I think that's quite a harsh view in some ways.
I think we've got quite a harsh view these days. That's the trouble.
Yeah, well, maybe, and I understand that, and there's good reason for that. But I think there has been some learning. Some forces are better at it than others, and the PSNI and its forerunner, the RUC, they had a long history of having to deal with these sorts of events and sort of big, spectacular occurrences and managing the information afterwards. So it may be that they're best placed to make sensible decisions. I think they have made a sensible decision. Yes, you can just imagine the reverse. If they hadn't come out and said nothing about him, then with everything that we can see, then of course the speculation would be rife, probably quite rightly, to say, oh, they're covering it up, they're hushing it up again. They've not done that. They've come out and
no, but I just wonder whether they don't have a choice anymore, and that we've kind of forced them into that to a certain extent.
I hope so.
Yeah,
but I hope they don't have a choice, because I think going forward,
we have a right to know.
And that's how we need to be, and that's how.
But when it comes to, it looks like this guy is suggesting, Kemi Badenoch said, looks like he's a migrant, and I think a lot of us will going to be, we don't know. I'm not saying we know this. I would not be surprised to discover he is a boat migrant who is living in a local hotel, a local house of multiple occupancy, and about whom we know absolutely nothing. From Somalian, there people are suggesting from the language he was speaking during this attack. Now, we had for a very, very long time, we had ordinary people, largely, women, mums, sisters, grandmothers, talking about the sexual assaults on their daughters, on themselves, happening from people who are in asylum hotels, and the difficulty of getting information for about a year about, the identity of these people who would only often come out after court cases, often not even reported in the local newspapers, that there was an issue with men coming from faraway places, very different cultures, had a very different attitude towards women and their rights and towards sex, and also towards violence, and often religious violence. We have a right to know if these people are in the country.
Yeah, we do. But, Julia, the window's shifted. You and I are talking about it here now, where we wouldn't have been perhaps a year or 18 months ago.
Well, I would have been.
Well, so would I. But
at least they're debating that on other... things have moved on. But they've only moved on... They haven't moved on through their choice. Let's talk about something else I think we all want to move on. This is the extraordinary revelation in the Telegraph today of 28 billion quid of our money, which has gone from foreign aid budgets and COVID relief loans, which were basically handed out like confetti to anyone who set up a company and a minute later applied for them. There was absolutely no checks on this. 28 billion quid gone out. But it's not just to sort of dodgy people in Britain on the make. It's gone out to terrorist groups, including ISIS. It's gone to foreign hostile states like Russia. It's gone to companies linked to the Chinese military. Huge amounts of money, organised criminals as well. We're never going to get that money back. There'll be barely any prosecutions, no prosecutions related to this. This is an internal document from 2023 about this happening over a 6-year period, before even the COVID pandemic. And apparently the government was just going to keep it covered up. Tories didn't want anyone to know about it. They kept it covered up. That's an outrage, isn't it?
It's an absolute outrage. Of course it is. And I mean, my first reaction when I heard the story was, well, are we surprised? Not at the cover-up, although I'm not surprised at that either. But... this money goes out, it's our money, and we're giving it with noble intentions, maybe, and we have absolutely no control over what happens to it afterwards. And, I firmly believe charity begins at home. I'm one of those, and I think to be sending this money, if it's well applied, is questionable, given our financial situation at the moment. Sending this money to go to causes and to organisations and to people like that is just an absolute joke, and it needs to stop. Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry. I want the people who decided to cover up. I want people sacked. I think I'm really fed up with people in the public sector just thinking they can spend my and everyone else's watching and listening's money as they see fit, with no accountability. If your accounts can't be signed off, you don't know where the money's gone, then I'm afraid you're not doing your job properly. Bye. And frankly, I'm thinking we should be looking at some criminal prosecutions of the people who signed off on a load of this money. Just finally, Kemi Badenoch, I know you're advisor to Reform UK, but Kemi Badenoch for the Tories. She's been talking today about getting rid of, identity politics from the public sector, from the public sector equality duty and the Equality Act. The Reform Party, the party you're advising, they want to just scrap the whole Equality Act and start again from scratch. And this comes after, of course, the horrific events of the police is dealing with Henry Novak's murderer. And when we saw that video, we're talking about that this time last week. But we've also seen in the last couple of days, police forces hiring diversity officers on salaries which are higher, way higher than the people who are actually carrying out the job of, catching criminals. £75,000 are being advertised by police forces as the rate for an equality, diversity, inclusion, human rights role. £64,000 for a culture and inclusion lead. And yet we're told we haven't got enough resources to actually police crime. What on earth's going on?
Well, I've been banging on about this for a year now. We don't know how much police forces in this country spend. It's something between 35 and 70 million pounds a year on EDI, DEI, however you want to phrase it. Yeah. And there is no evidence at all that it provides a better experience of policing.
If not worse.
If you need police to help you, what you want are two well-trained professional officers with you quickly to deal with your problem. And you do not care what colour they are, what race they are, what their sexual orientation is. You don't care. You just want efficient police officers to turn up and do the job. Yeah. And this whole business of having kowtowing and paying sort of respect to things that are invented has led to deaths.
Yeah, absolutely.
Salman Abedi, Faldo Collar-Kane, all the rape gangs. All of this is because people were pussyfooting around and saying, we're not going to deal with this because we'll get called racist. Well, that needs to go. We need to stop, and we need to start treating everybody equally.
Exactly. The first thing to do is get rid of the people whose job it is to basically keep that all going. I mean, we need a full Elon Musk Doge-style clear-out, and even he didn't manage it. Colin Sutton, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Retired Senior Police Investigating Officer, also Police and Crime Advisor for Reform UK. Thank you for that. Henry Hill from The Critic, still with me. I mean, these stories, and we see this, you know, like hospitals, we can't afford a new radiographer, but we've got a net zero officer. It's the same thing. It's all mad.
It is mad. I think the thing to remember is that this is going to take... How did the police get like this in the first place, right?
Yeah.
It was, you know, in the 1990s, post Stephen Lawrence, a huge deliberate effort to profoundly change how the police operated, right? And it's not going to be a matter of scrapping a few laws. That is the scale of effort that's going to be required. Senior officers who have come up over the last 30 years, marinated in this culture, right? Some of them are going to have to be moved on, right? Yeah. You need to repeal the laws that make sure that give these people their jobs. You need to make sure that they lose them. It's a huge...
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It is a huge body of work. If you scrap something, this is something I always try and tell politicians, if you scrap something, and nobody's walking out of a building with a plant in a box at the end of the day, you haven't really scrapped it.
Absolutely nailed it there. 11:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about these allegations in the BBC and the Times investigation into David Sullivan, the former co-owner of West Ham, and of course the former boss of the Daily and Sunday Sport. What on earth is alleged, and what was going on? We'll talk about that with Jim White from The Telegraph. This is Talk.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. We're going to be talking about David Sullivan right now. Now, he, of course, he's been a big figure in the, I won't say journalism, or won't even say newspapers, but papers over the years. He used to be the owner of the Sunday and the Daily Sport. And also, crucially, of course, especially for our guys and gals that are just down the hallway here, Talk Sport, he was, of course, the co-owner of West Ham. But he stood down from that role after police investigations going back 18 years into sexual misconduct claims, which, they were dropped without charge, but lots of these allegations have been raised in a new report coming out in the Times and in the BBC on a programme it's showing tonight. Let's talk about those right now with Jim White, who's a sports writer at The Telegraph. Very good morning to you, Jim.
Morning, Julia.
Now, look, there were police investigations, cases, but in a Panorama programme, aired on Monday night, 7 women, 6 of them not giving their identity, only one giving their identity, accused Sullivan of abuses of power against, they say, vulnerable people. Basically, the casting couch. Basically, you have to give a certain kind of job to get a job, bearing in mind that these women were all trying to get jobs as topless models. Now, people keep using the term glamour model. It's called soft porn in my book. And they wanted a job getting their boobs out in a national paper, and in return for which he basically, they say, expected them to give him sexual favours in some cases when they were teenagers. Now, he has denied any wrongdoing. He has said an interesting phrase at some point that he owned a sweetie shop. Of course, he sampled the sweeties at times. I'm not sure a helpful, but always consensually says a helpful comment. But what do you make of these allegations and his blanket denial and insistence that he will sue?
Very, very interesting, that thing that he says he's going to sue on this, Julia, because I watched the programme last night and basically I came out of it at the end needing a shower. Obviously, it was disgusting what was going on, but I really could not see that there was any criminality involved. I think what we're talking about is what is consent, in that it's quite clear. Julia, I don't want to be lookist about this, but just take a look at David Sullivan in the pictures that you're showing at the moment. Yeah. He claims to have slept with 1,000 women. I suspect that not many of those 1,000 would say that they were attracted to him for his looks or his charisma. No. I think that this is a case of a bloke can give you, as you said, a job if you provide him with something else. Now, I think a lot of the women who were interviewed last night admitted that they were, sort of consenting, as it were, that they weren't coerced into it. It's a question of power. And I'm not sure what he can sue for, because we have known this bloke is a sleazy piece of work for the last 40 years. You know, in 1981, there was an investigation by the News of the World where he basically admitted that he asked models to sleep with him if they wanted to get on in the business. This is I don't know. I just found it really disappointing if they were thinking that they were going to come up with something new, fresh, and really nailing him for illegal activity, because I just can't see there was any that they found.
That's an interesting take on that. And again, I mean, some of the women who were saying, like, they left, the door was locked and they demanded that they were able to leave. Other women, we don't know whether they did actually. I haven't watched the documentary in full, but some will have gone along with it. Look, we saw the horrific case with Harvey Weinstein in the casting couch, and we've seen this across Hollywood, where some women, thankfully escaped. Some women agreed to the deal. I'll make you famous if you have sex with me. Some women were raped, were sexually assaulted. Those are all very different things, and it's very easy, isn't it, to say, why didn't you just say no? Put two fingers up and walk away. These women thought that this was the big career. They were going to make money. They were going to be famous. This was getting their boobs out was, for some bizarre reason, for a lot of women, the height of their career ambitions. And some women might have thought, well, if that's what I have to do, that's what I have to do. I suppose a lot of us, I'm saying this as a middle-aged mum, just feel like it was a sleazy business from word go. He ran, he worked in the porn industry. He's selling a newspaper with boobs on. I know the Sun used to have them. Don't approve of that. Always campaigned against that as well. No reason for bare breasts to be in a national newspaper. I've always made it very clear. You want to enter a sleazy business? Should you be surprised that you're facing sleaze when you try and get into a sleazy business? I mean, is that cruel?
I think, Julia, what was made clear from the programme was that he had a certain modus operandi. Several of the women that were interviewed told the same story. Yeah. And that modus operandi was, he'd invite them to his house, he'd greet them wearing pretty grubby clothing, and at some point he would say, if you want to get on in this business, you've got to be my best friend, as it were. I don't think there was any suggestion that if they rejected him, there would be any coercion. I think if they rejected him, they just wouldn't get the modelling contract. So there was a kind of blackmail involved, but I'm not sure it was an illegal blackmail. The fascinating thing is that David Sullivan has spent the last couple of years trying to stop this programme coming out, trying to stop the Times investigation. There was a slap order was placed on it. And I'm not sure why. I just don't really see. I mean, everybody knew he was the if you looked in the OED, the definition of sleaze was David Sullivan. And what this programme and the Times report, thorough though they were, is just telling us David Sullivan was sleazy and horrible and revolting. What I think is really interesting is the enablers around him. You know, very interesting that Karen Brady, for instance, resigned in the middle of the football season from her position at West Ham, kind of knowing this programme was going to come out at some point.
Yeah.
And I, you know, why did he buy West Ham? Well, I once interviewed his colleague, David Gold.
Yeah, I've got about 10 seconds, Jim. Make it quick.
Oh, sorry. He wanted respect. This programme has destroyed any hope of
not sure that's worked out. The thing about running a football club is you get a lot more attention. A lot of men seem to find that over the years, don't they? I would say it's extraordinary story, but it's not. These things are never shocking anymore, true or not. Really appreciate you joining us, sports writer at The Telegraph, Jim White. I really appreciate that. 11:59 is the time. Henry Hill looking relieved. I'm not going to ask him to comment on this. We're going to go to the top of the hour. Up next, we're going to be talking to Lord Hannon about all the big stories in the news. Get more of your calls on air as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's 2 minutes past midday, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, thank you very much indeed for your company. It's so much to talk about. If you missed anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing, because we put out clips from lots of the interviews on X as well, so you can have a look at that. Now, coming up in this hour, of course, we're still talking about this Somali man who's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a knife man appeared to attempt to behead a man on the street in Belfast. Absolutely extraordinary footage. I really don't encourage you to take a look at it. We've got a still, if you're watching us on YouTube rather than just listening to us, you can see there's a still, we had to blur it out, of the man who's alleged to carry out this attack, covered in blood, holding up the weapon that was used well, clearly it looks like attempting to behead a man lying on the street. Thankfully, bystanders rushed in and it would appear saved the man, as you've just been hearing in the news, in a serious critical condition with a huge number of wounds to his neck, his face and his back. We'll be talking about that and taking your calls on that. Also, a secret dossier claims £28 billion in aid and COVID relief funds was diverted to terrorists, including ISIS, criminal gangs and hostile states, including Russia and China. But when the government discovered how much had been gone missing, 28 billion quid of your and my money, what did they do? Did they reveal it to us? No, they decided to keep it hidden. Do they have a right to do that? Plus, Kemi Badenoch has given a big speech this morning, pledging to remove identity politics from public services by scrapping a key equality duty. And also we'll be talking about whether university is worth the money, or indeed the time, with half of graduates now earning below the average wage a full 5 years after leaving university, amid warnings of debt trap degrees. We'll talk about all of that in the next hour. Delighted to say joining me for the rest of the show, as he's doing just since 10 o'clock, Henry Hill, Piers Claridge to the Critic. A very good morning to you. We must just reiterate this horrific attack in Belfast. We can't show the video. I encourage people not to look at the video. Actually, I don't think those images are going to leave your head any time very soon. But extraordinary video: a man being stabbed to death on the street, a woman videoing, shouting to this man to stop. 3 men then rush in at the point when they realise, as the woman says, she said they're trying to behead him. Well, I think the man says they're trying to behead him. Where man, he's stabbing, brutally stabbing, shouting words, clearly not English. It would appear he was speaking Somalian, and then just taking his knife and appearing to just be trying to basically saw his head, saw his neck. This is the point when 3 men rush in, one man with some sort of wooden bat, smashing him repeatedly over the head to try and get him to stop before the police arrive very, very soon afterwards. It is absolutely horrific. There's no doubt at all. The authorities have had to react to this. We've had the Prime Minister called it a horrific attack. Thoughts first and foremost with the victim, but he said the attack last night is sickening. Kemi Badenoch said she's horrified. It's a horrific incident, and she did urge the police to bring the facts out as quickly as possible so that we can get some clarity. But she also said, is this someone who should have not have been in our country? Have there been failings around our borders? And that is going to be another major issue. We've got enough of our own wrong-uns, have we not? But if there are people who are here who've got no right to be in the country, and this is what a lot of people are going to be suspecting in this case, illegal migrant, about migrant. We don't know. I'm not saying that is the case, but if that is what a lot of people are questioning, people will be saying, why is this person free on the streets and why has this happened?
Because we have a system which de facto selects for the very worst people because of the way that the current human rights system operates, right? Because what happens is, if a criminal would be treated to conditions in the country to which we'd return them, which would violate their human rights, we won't do it. Which means that actually the best way to guarantee that you get to stay in this country is if you're from a death penalty state, commit a death penalty offence, right? Because then we can't send you back. There was a case a couple of years ago where a rapist couldn't be deported, successfully appealed against deportation to Afghanistan because, quote, his risky behaviours would expose him to danger in Afghanistan because Afghanistan treats rapists more vigorously than we do, right? So actually this is...
Just head in hands time, everybody, head in hands time.
Right, this is one of the biggest problems with the way the system currently operates. I've heard from some sources that they often don't arrest people from who they catch smuggling drugs if they're related to Singapore because Singapore has the death penalty, right? So actually if they arrested them, they wouldn't be able to deport them to Singapore and they'd go straight into the system and stay here forever. So that's why.
That's all I've got.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, happy Tuesday, everyone. Well, look, let's talk to my next guest about this and lots of the other big stories in the news. Daniel Hannan is an independent peer and incoming director of the Institute of Economic Affairs, the free market think tank. Good morning to you. Sorry, good afternoon to you, Lord Hannan.
Good afternoon, my dear Julia.
I mean, this story is absolutely horrific. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned this, the fact that 3 pupils, we understand, have been stabbed or injured at a Manchester academy school, the Co-op school, Co-op Academy, and a schoolgirl arrested after an alleged knife attack this morning, kids in lockdown. It does feel sometimes that we are just living in a very, very, very scary and crazy country right now. But your reaction to this horrific event in Belfast, first of all, please.
Well, the same as you just heard from Henry there. I mean, extraordinary that we have this government that is performatively and histrionically keeping out bloggers and commentators whose opinions it doesn't like, even though they've said nothing illegal. And yet it cannot stop muggers, rapists, terrorists, murderers entering our country. I don't know what the background of this particular attacker was, but I can tell you as fact that small boat people have come and have committed appalling crimes within weeks, months of arrival. And it's for exactly the reason you just heard from Henry Hill. We are selecting in favour of the worst people.
Well, we're told what the solution is by many on the left. Well, you want to stop the boat migrants, but we should have legal routes for these people to come here. They can't apply for asylum in Somalia or in Ethiopia or in Afghanistan or Iran or anywhere, in which case it's the only way to get here is to actually get your feet onto our, well, in a dinghy on a Royal Navy vessel and then on British soil to get here. But of course, that wouldn't stop a lot of the people who do come here, would it? Simply because those people are unlikely to actually get granted asylum under that system.
Right. The reason that people risk life and limb to come here is not because they want to live on £49 a week. It's because they know that they will not be deported. That's the difference between here and France or Belgium, Germany, the other safe countries through which they've travelled en route. They know that they won't be deported. And that is a problem that goes way beyond political will. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it's easy if only you really wanted to. But actually, you really have to look at fixing the institutional plumbing first. We have a problem with a politicised judiciary. A number of these immigration tribunals that always and everywhere overturn every deportation claim. We have a problem with a politicised civil service. One of the claimants who brought the legal challenge to the Rwanda scheme under the last government was the trade union representing Home Office civil servants, which kind of gives you an idea of how they see the world. And so anyone, I suppose really what I'm doing is I'm warning against easy solutions and facile promises, right? Yes, it is possible to turn this around, but it is not simply a question of, just instructing the boats to be turned back mid-channel. We need a much deeper look at why the British state is malfunctioning, how to bring power back to elected people, and then we can start building a functioning immigration policy.
It would be nice if we had a functioning immigration system. That would be quite nice. But again, you touched on lots of things. Again, you were a leading Brexiteer. I was a keen Brexiteer. One of the many reasons was actually we've got problems in our own country, but my God, they're even worse in the EU in lots of ways. But this story ties in with that, really. This revelation in the Telegraph today of £28 billion of foreign aid and COVID relief funds, but it goes back to 2015 all the way to 2021, so it's long before lockdown, some of it. Huge sums of money being handed out basically without proper checks to what turns out eventually making their way to, it's organised criminals, to, that was on a mass scale during COVID, to terrorist groups, including ISIS, to a Russian state, to companies with close links to the Chinese military. Basically, an awful lot of people who wish us very, very not well. And there was a Cabinet Office did an investigation. The Security Service looked into where this money had gone. They found out where it had gone. It was supposed to be sent round various government departments, and the decision was taken. This was all too awful, too embarrassing, and so it wasn't sent out. Dossier was kept secret, and neither did many people in government know about it, but certainly the public didn't know about it. I'm very pleased it's on the front page of the Telegraph today, but it shouldn't take a dossier being leaked for us to know about this. There should be a legal requirement, should there not, for any government of any political hue, you were previously a Conservative MEP, for any government to tell us how our taxpayers' money is spent and misspent.
Well, but I bet you that no minister knew about those things. I mean, I cannot imagine any elected politician signing off on the items that you've just described, right? I mean, they're not suicidal. They need to get re-elected.
No, but there's a difference. There's a difference between, oh yeah, let's give some money to ISIS and let's give some money, just hand out money to organisations and charities and bothers, and not be that bothered about whether the money does end up.
That's the point, right? Who is the let's? Who's making this decision? It's the same point about the dysfunctionality of a state that has become wholly immune to public opinion and beyond democratic control. So embedded in our administrative state, in our permanent bureaucracy, are these people with third worldist views who start from the proposition that, we're a bad country and we owe something to the world because we were more successful than them. It's what the great Conservative philosopher Roger Scruton used to call the Down With Us party, that he always thought was running the Foreign Office. And I think it doesn't just run the Foreign Office now. It's very widespread. And any incoming government or any incoming new Labour leader, if they want to be credible and want to get re-elected, is going to have to tackle that problem. Because otherwise, it doesn't really matter what you promise. You're never going to be in a position to deliver.
No, indeed. And again, we know whoever gets into power next time round. It's fascinating, actually. Even Keir Starmer, in some of his, I think, liaison committee question and answer sessions, and he's talked about how, the most frustrating thing, government, you can't get anything done. You pull a lever and nothing happens. Something Tony Blair was complaining about in 1998, 99, not being able to get anything done. We see this again and again. Conservatives stopped again and again from getting anything done by the civil service. Labour Party went in and obviously thought, they're on our side, we'll get stuff done. They can't get anything done. God forbid what happens after the next election if we did have, whether it's a Reform government, a Conservative government, a Reform Conservative coalition or whatever it is, the stuff that is on the agenda that Kemi Badenoch's talking about, that Nigel Farage is talking about, there's barely a civil servant or a lawyer or judge in this land who's going to allow that to happen.
Right. And this is a problem that started really with the reforms that Tony Blair brought in, supposedly to protect the independence of the civil service and so on, but in practice to create these political imperatives that overrode what their elected ministers were telling them to do. And the result of that is exactly as you say. Boris Johnson had a typically characteristically vivid phrase. He said, it's like being in one of those dreams where your feet won't move. You give all these instructions and nothing happens. And as you say, Keir Starmer has now found the same thing just in time for him to be booted out. And sadly, every incoming leader seems to have bought the idea that only willpower is missing, that once they get their own charisma and brilliance in there, everything will be fixed. So, but I do think it's important for the opposition parties. Maybe it's too late for any incoming Labour leader, I don't know. But the opposition parties need to think, and I think they are starting to look, at what are the institutional changes. Could we go back to the kind of civil service we had in the 80s and early 90s, governed by what were called the Armstrong Principles, which basically said, here's the deal, your minister takes the flak, he's responsible, that means you do what he says, provided it's not an illegal order. If we could get back to that, I think a lot of things would change. And by the way, I think a lot of civil servants would much prefer that, right? Because they're at the moment in danger of becoming themselves targets of public opinion. I noticed during the kind of Sue Gray stuff and the parties in Downing Street that for the first time, the names of failing officials were beginning to come out in the media, and they say, well, this is monstrously unfair because we can't defend ourselves. Right, okay, but the flip side of that then is you stop making up policy. You become a channel for the...
You do as you're told, and then... again, the madness of the idea that the civil servants get to have a say. I say other than being asked to do something blatantly illegal. But again, they have a funny way of deciding what they think is legal. And I wonder if this actually ties in with what Kemi Badenoch's had to say today, because she, in a speech this morning, has pledged to end identity politics in the public sector. She says, let's sweep away this rubbish, bring back common sense. In particular, this is obviously in the wake of the Henry Novak case and the explosion of righteous anger, I would say, pure cold anger, a rage, as Nigel Farage said, about the treatment of the police of a young white lad dying who'd been accused of racism. So therefore, everything he said at that point, like I can't breathe, I've been stabbed, was just treated as a lie, because of the identity politics that is absolutely engulfed policing. And we've seen the documents in quite literally black and white, telling police officers not to treat people the same, treat them differently because of their colour of their skin. Kemi Badenoch says she wants to get rid of that. She wants to return to what she says simple common sense. And crucially, she wants to get public sector equality duty basically written out of the Equality Act. This is, and again, this is absolutely bad. It's a central plank of that. It requires public bodies to consider how they impact on people with protected characteristics like race and gender, sexuality and things like that. How every single thing they do it impacts on those people. One of the key protected characteristics that does not include, of course, white men. Is she right? And does this go far enough? And can we get rid of this identity politic obsession that is totally and utterly dominates now every single aspect of our public sector?
Yes, it does. And it, again, goes back to Blair. And actually, I think the Equality Act was Brown. But it's not just about reasserting the principle that all adults are equal before the law, important though that is. It's about undoing an ideology that is now literally lethal.
Yeah.
In the case of, okay, Henry Novak tragically had been stabbed to death. It was abominable that that young man died having his rights read to him in handcuffs. That was the last conscious thing he would have heard. But the court seems to have been pretty clear that it was already too late for him. But in the case of the Valdo Calacane victims,
this is the Nottingham
where the authorities in Nottingham wanted to section him, and we heard at the inquiry were worried because they saw evidence that too many young black men were being sectioned, so they didn't. Or in the case of Axel Ruda-Cabana in Southport, where the headmistress had said, I'm really worried about this boy. He seems to have an animus against white people. He keeps bringing a knife to school, you know.
He's a
and
danger.
She was told, you're stereotyping him as a black boy with a knife, and he then went and murdered 3 little girls with a knife.
Yep.
Or indeed, in the case of the rape gangs, what we're seeing again and again is this pattern where the worst thing that can happen to you in the public sector is to be accused of showing lack of due racial sensitivity.
Yeah.
And people have ended up making decisions that are literally with fatal consequences because we have sacralized this idea of anti-racism. We've built it up beyond any conceivable proportionate need to the problem it purports to address. And we've made it something that simply the whiff of accusation is like is putting the mark of the beast on someone.
Yeah.
And so we need a massive cultural change. The problems we've had in those cases, in some of the free speech cases, is not that we have passed bad laws. It's not even really the Equality Act, although that is a part of it. It is decades of DEI training in the public sector. And in a way, there's a bit of me that sympathizes with the authorities in all of these cases, because it's very difficult to imagine someone dying in horrible circumstances. Right? That's quite a difficult thing to picture in your mind. But you can very easily imagine getting into trouble for not having said the right thing about wokery and DEI and race. And people understandably are more worried by the more imaginable thing than by the prospect of some terrible thing happening.
Yeah.
And that's why we need fundamentally to alter the whole way in which these people are.
But also the whole framing of these things. I mean, I hate it, speaking as a woman, when people say, well, there aren't enough women in these jobs and FTSE 100 companies or whatever. I would say I'm more worried about the fact there aren't enough men teaching in primary schools, so young boys don't have good role models about, what a good man, in a professional position is in. I mean, there's plenty of obvious reasons why a lot of women aren't in these top FTSE 100 jobs, because they want to be mums and they want to have a different kind of lifestyle balance, and frankly, too sane to do a lot of those jobs, in my view, in terms of the sacrifices for them. But we often hear about, you should say, too many black men who are in mental health institutions. What is too many? Too many men being stopped for stop and search, or too many black men in prison. And we see David Lammy, Justice Secretary, talking about these numbers as well, as if there is somehow a moral choice. Like some of these men should not be there and more white people should be there, completely ignoring the demographic, the socioeconomic background, the family breakdown, drug addiction, which has a massive impact in terms of mental health issues. There is a reason. There are lots and lots of very, very, very complicated, different, long-standing reasons why certain groups in society, whether it's men or women, old or young, black or white, it's in the city, rural, whatever, should be in particular predicaments with the authorities. And it's got very little to do, usually, with the colour of their skin.
Indeed. Many more men than women are stopped and searched.
Yes. So now, that's unfair,
Is that some profound institutional bias, or is it correlating to the differential crime rates and the differential witness descriptions and so on, right? And if it is, as we can all see, as a matter of common sense, that, young men are more likely to commit crimes than old ladies, and that therefore it would be quite weird if old ladies were stopped and searched as much as young men, then why does that stop being true when it comes to any other characteristics? And of course, what we're seeing here is this kind of critical race theory that says any disparities are always, and by definition, the fault of structural prejudice and bigotry. They cannot be caused by anything else. This one may not be quite as lethal, although one could see that in the case of stop and search, one could see circumstances where it might become so. But it is kind of bankrupting our country, right? The reason that Birmingham our second city was plunged into the crisis it was because of a bizarre reading of the equality law that said because bin men are getting a bonus that teaching assistants are not getting, and because most bin men are men, and because most teaching assistants are not, therefore the
must be sexist.
The council needs to pay out. And I mean, this is again is what I began by saying. We have courts who are making stuff up as they go along. They're ruling on the basis of what they think the law ought to say, rather than what
it does. Lord Hannon, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, independent peer. He's incoming DG of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Henry Hill, listening to all of that, I mean, I imagine you probably agreed with an awful lot of it. I imagine a lot of our audience did as well. I do find a lot of the time, just finding myself just sighing deeply a lot of stories. Like, why are we still talking about this madness? Why don't people care about the facts?
I mean, I do think the tide has turned a little bit on this stuff now, in that, the defenders of this kind of arrangement really do feel like they're on the back foot. But to give you an example of what I think Lord Hannon was talking about in terms of the incentives for people, right? He was talking about how people, rightly, in the public sector, worry that if they say the wrong thing or they're accused of racism, it'll end their career.
Yeah.
Now, he mentioned those people who, when somebody went with a serious concern about Axel Rueda-Cabana, and they accused the whistleblower of stereotyping him, and they shut down this. I have not heard about there being professional consequences for them. Right?
There never are.
Right, and they haven't. You see, now that, we hear about the politicians, that'd be an interesting law, right? Yeah. If you shut down an inquiry and then that person goes on to commit a crime or a murder, if that had professional consequences for you, that would change things.
There have been no consequences for pretty much anyone working in public life at any point in the public sector from pretty much doing anything at all, despite a load of this wrongdoing and abject failures. It is absolutely extraordinary, it really is. 12:25 is the time. I'm sure you want to have your say. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Before we do that, by the way, earlier we did mention the Makerfield by-election. I'm just going to read you as quick as I can. Those candidates in full. I still don't see why we have to do this, but we do. They are Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats, Cat Binface Party, Andy Burnham, the Labour Party, Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Alan Howling Lord, Hope, the official monster raving losing party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin EU, Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. Also, just to let you know, TalkSport have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the World Cup. It starts on Thursday. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer or settling in for an afternoon with friends, make sure you check out talksport.com/so good to find your nearest pub. So Good, 18 plus. Please drink responsibly. I do that sometimes too. I'm going to take a quick break. This is Talk.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. George is in Dundee. George, you want to talk about this horrific stabbing, and it looks like attempted beheading in Belfast last night, don't you?
Yes, I do, Julia.
What do you want to say, my love?
What I want to say is, I remember not so long ago when an incident was a traffic jam on the M25.
Yes.
When an incident was somebody stealing a tin of beans out of Tesco. This has been described as an incident.
Yep.
This barbarian is trying to hack somebody's head off and blind them in the middle of the street. This isn't an incident. This is an invasion of this country, and the politicians and the elite have lost control. What I want Keir Starmer to be doing now is standing outside Downing Street saying, we're going to put a warship in the channel, and anybody that tries to come across, we will turn them back by force if necessary. Then he should start on all the people that are here that shouldn't be here and start dumping them in another country as far away from our people as possible.
You mean like a Rwanda-style policy, which of course they've rejected? I'm quite happy that put them in an internment camp, and I'm just like, I mean, not a very pleasant one. I'm with you. I'm done now. But everyone, look, we don't know the immigration status of this man. A lot of people, I mean, even Kemi Begnaud, the Tory leader, was saying, you know, he's believed to be Somali. You know, what is his status? Nigel Farage asking for that. You know, there is an element where people just go, you know, we don't want people who have no right to be in this country walking around freely, whoever they are, even if they're not committing violent acts. The act of being in this country illegally, and I say that not just for the illegal migrants coming over on the boats. I mean the people who are here who have had a 2-month visa or a 6-month visa or a 2-year visa who are still here 5 years later. I'm done. I want them gone.
Julia, they say the UK has a history of doing the right thing. The right thing for our country and our people is to turn this scum around. We do not want them, and they're a danger to our women, our girls, our elderly and our children.
Yeah, I agree. Look, again, we don't know the status of this man, so he needs to be. But as a general thing, yeah, I think in terms of the criminality levels we're talking about, and even if it wasn't the same, even if it was the same criminality levels as people from here, I don't care. We've got our own wrong-uns. We're stuck with them. We don't want to import any more. George, I feel your anger. I really do, and I think the rest of the country shares it as well. Well, anyone paying attention. Michael is in Birmingham. Michael, what do you want to say?
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
Nice to speak to you. Yeah, look, we're up against zealots here and an ideology which they simply will not shift from.
Yep.
The people on the left, if you tied Keir Starmer to a post and said, what's the most important thing that you've got in your life, he'd say diversity.
Oh, yeah.
And all of these zealots would. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I met a young guy. Right, we were talking about football and football hooliganism.
Yeah.
And he viewed a few football supporters in Paris jostling a black man as more serious than the 39 deaths at the Heysel Stadium. And that is what...
He genuinely said that?
Yes, he did. When I said, surely you understand that that's more... He just shrugged his shoulders and gave that kind of like lefty glazed face. And I've seen that in the public sector so many times. Whereas exactly what's being said...
Well, it's the same. No, but it's the same as the Henry Novak case. The man lying on the ground appeared to be drunk. I mean, they said he was drunk on the 999 call. He did appear to be drunk because he'd been stabbed and he was a mouthful of blood. And when he said he'd been stabbed and he couldn't breathe, he wasn't believed because someone standing above him had said he was a racist. And therefore, nothing else was going to be of as in such importance as here was a racist.
Yeah, and I've spent a lot of time in the public sector keeping a low profile on matters like this. And it's not just at the top. It's right through to the very junior staff. They've got this hard space where diversity is the most important. And look, let me tell you, they set up DEI officers, right? You make somebody 150 grand a year inequalities officer. What's the first thing they're going to find?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. You've got a whole load of people whose main aim in life is to find this problem, identify it, and then, hire more people to work under them to deal with it.
And I know I've been on a bit, but just what the solution needs to be. The solution needs to be Trumpian. In the interim, before they get into government, Reform needs to be launching as many legal challenges to stop this lunacy as they can. But when they get in, they need to be going into, forget niceties, just closing departments wholesale from day one. Firing everybody from day one.
Do you know what? That's where I am. Also, you know what? Given what we went through in lockdown, the extraordinary control they took over of all our lives and democratic bodies, I find it absolutely extraordinary that they couldn't use something back. I would say we are in national emergency territory. It's hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants, boat migrants and lorry migrants. We've also got identified, we reckon, 1 million overstaying illegal migrants. I'd be very surprised if it isn't double that number. If people don't think that's a national emergency, I don't know what is. In which case, do whatever powers you have necessary to take away the civil liberties of those people with no right to be here. Michael, thank you for that. It's just extraordinary. I mean, the level of anger about this and is absolutely palpable and understandable. Pure cold rage, I believe Nigel Farage would call it. Anyway, on a happier note, I mentioned a little bit earlier the World Cup. It kicks off, the FIFA World Cup kicks off on Thursday. This week, our friends at TalkSport are sending you Anna Mate straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of. Plus, Adidas is throwing in the official Triundo match ball and a fresh pair of boots. So don't miss out, and here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer here at Talk. Henry Hill is still with me, political editor at The Critic. Get his thoughts on what this next story is all about. Chris McGovern is chairman of the Campaign for Free Education. Wish he was, actually. That'll be relevant to the story. Real education. And joins us now to talk about, well, whether university is worth it or not. Good afternoon to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, this is an interesting new report that is looking at whether or not, you know, it is worth your while to go to university, given the huge cost. I think you probably did as well. I went when you still got a full grant. I think loans were just starting. Still came out with a few grand in overdraft. Scared to put my card into the wall for a few years. But basically, half of graduates now earn below the average wage 5 years after leaving university, with often huge amounts of debt. Is university worth it?
Well, for some children, young people, obviously it is. We have great universities. The problem is, Julia, that we have far too many youngsters going. When I was at university, I think 5% of school leavers went to university. Yeah. Now, thanks to Tony Blair, it's 50%. And quite clearly, universities are mis-selling this higher education, because we're finding that if you don't get an A or a B at A level, probably, almost certainly, you're going to get on a course which is not worth taking. And we have a big shortage of skilled workers, engineers, roofers, plumbers, etc. We have far too many graduates. I spoke at a national conference of admissions tutors a few years ago, and I made that very point. I said, you know, if you want to see what your graduates are doing, go over the road to the coffee bar, because a lot of them are working as baristas.
And that's the thing, look, but that said, you know, I worked as a waitress after being at uni, and I knew what I wanted to do, but I sort of need a little bit of time to get my own. I was always working, paying my own way, paying my own rent. I wasn't on the dole or sitting, you know, expecting my parents to fund me. I mean, they'd have charged me rent if I was living at home anyway. But so I think you can understand, like, in the next year after university, people starting out in their career. I worked as a local newspaper on £9 grand a year, and it wasn't that long ago, folks. That was, you know, it was still an absolute pittance, could barely make ends meet. But this interesting. This poll is looking at, you know, at 5 years on. This is by the Policy Exchange think tank. 5 years on, you'd expect to start to be reaping the rewards of your degree. But a lot of it depends on what degree you do and where you go, doesn't it?
It certainly does. At that conference, when I spoke, by the way, after the conference finished, it was witnessed by the press, this conference, 3 university admissions tutors came up to me privately and said, Chris, thank you for telling the truth, because no one else will do this. The Campaign for Real Education has been saying for years that these degrees are inflated in their grades and they're pretty useless. So after 5 years, if you're earning less than the average wage, transparently, it's not worth it. No. But schools themselves promote the universities because most teachers have not been outside the education system.
And
that's
also,
all they know.
It's how they judge. I mean, you know, it's how they judge the success of the school. Look, we get X and Y to universities. But I'm amazed. I mean, even, you know, from people I know, the number of, you know, middle-class families whose kids are very, very bright, get there, he goes, no idea what they want to do, and they go and do a course that, frankly, I just don't think is frankly worth the paper it's printed on, and they're getting into huge amounts of debt. I mean, certainly, if you're on Plan 2, as a lot of people in this office are younger graduates, I mean, extraordinary amount of interest you're paying from the moment you take the loan out, not even once you start earning and start paying it back. And a huge amount of debt for a degree that may have nothing to do with anything they actually want to do in their future life. But crucially, often very little teaching provided. Lots of universities are still doing nothing, pretty much anything face-to-face, unless it's science or medicine. And they're getting into massive debt. And they're not getting a better job than they otherwise would have done. And crucially, losing 3 years of earning as well. What should be, I mean, for parents or indeed a young person listening to this right now, what should be the deciding factor? Because I wanted to go to university. I had a massive benefit from it. I used my university degree all the time in my job. And I wanted my daughter to go to university, and she's at university now, because I think it would suit the sort of stuff she wants to do. But what would you say to someone who's got a perfectly bright kid, or maybe not an academic kid, but again, you know, what would you say to them about whether or not university was worth it or not?
Well, let me say, first of all, that debt you refer to is incredible. It's about approaching 300 billion unpaid at the moment, which is 3 or 4 times the defence budget. It's incredible. So what do I say to parents? Well, what I would say is and I would say to the government as well, is that we need to relook at education at the age of 14. We need to have children going on vocational and academic pathways. Nothing wrong with going to university like I did to study history, because that I become a historian. That's fine. I'm a teacher and so forth, but that's what I do. Now, most children will find if they go to university these days, they're not going to get a job for which they need a degree. And therefore, when I talk to parents, I say, well, look, what is your child's aptitude? And what I say to government is, look, for heaven's sake, look at the curriculum from the age of 14. We need academic pathways and we need vocational pathways. And we shouldn't undervalue university. We have great universities, but currently the grades are being inflated, the quality of the teaching's being undermined, and we've got a miserable generation of young people who have been missold these courses, and it's a disaster for the economy. We can't afford it. Later Scots, I would argue perhaps if 10 or 15, maybe 20% of kids went to university and they had it paid for them. I would support that.
That's exactly where I'd be like. I've always said, I think the 50% target was always insane. And again, only someone like Tony Blair, who went to a top private school, has never sat. I never sat in a classroom with. I was in my English lit class with kids who could barely read and write. I mean, people who've gone to grammar school, a lot of our political class, grammar school or private school, have no idea what ordinary classrooms are like in most bog standard. I don't mean sink schools, but just bog standard schools in terms of the level of education. The idea that if 50% of young people, as is currently the case, cannot get a decent grade GCSE, then 50% should then go into university, is crazy. I mean, it's clearly crazy. The numbers don't add up.
But you're missing something here, Julia. There's money to be made for the universities. It's like a job creation scheme. The universities will offer incentives for the schools and for the kids to go to university. Absolutely right. I mean, it's an incredible waste.
Because they get money even if you drop out after a year. They don't care. They still got your fees for the year.
Yeah, and yet the country's suffering from a lack of skilled workers. So we have high immigration to fill the gaps. We need immigration because we need workers who are skilled. We've got to produce our own, then we won't need so many immigrants.
What about something? I agree with you in terms of, cutting the number. Again, if you want to go and study something utterly useless at university at a bog standard form of polytechnic, fine. But you're going to have to get your own loan out and you're going to have to deal with it. It's not going to be the state's problem. But we should absolutely be making sure we make it possible for our young people to train as, the engineers and the doctors and the jobs that we need to be done. What about having a case where, when we identify, and business helps identify, here are the jobs, here are the skills we are missing, we're having to import from abroad, and basically making those courses cheaper or free to top candidates from Britain?
Yeah, absolutely vital. And as I say, you should start from the age of 14. It needs to start earlier in schools. And we need to educate teachers to understand there is a world beyond the academic. Now, look, I'm an academic, so I know the value of academic world. But for most children aren't academic. They need to go on vocational training. And it's for the good of the... We don't have a choice in this. Sometimes people think there's no choice. The rest of the world are training kids to be engineers, to be skilled workers, roofers, electricians, and so on. And children would behave much better if they knew there was a job at the end of it. The whole thing.
But part of the issue, isn't it, you said, because teachers have gone through that route themselves, like career advisors don't have any idea often about those other sort of jobs, probably the most useless people in any school at all. But there's this idea that if you don't encourage kids to go to university from all backgrounds, then you're somehow writing them off. But that is the attitude of everyone in the political, media and teaching class, which is that, if you don't go to university, you're a failure. Despite the fact that actually, the plumbers, electricians, the builders, the roofers and all those people are going to be earning a shed load more money than their kids who've done a degree in psychology.
Yeah, you're right. It's incredible British snobbery. It's the worst characteristic of our society, I think. We don't value people who use their hands. My mum used to say to me, Chris, get yourself a trade. Well, it's actually was very good advice. It's still very good advice. No problem in earning 100 grand if you're a plumber in London, believe me. And kids need to get that message. They need to understand there are other pathways than the academic pathway.
Absolutely. Chris, great to talk to you. Always the voice of common sense. Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. education. I've lost the ability to read at the point of talking to him. Henry Hill, listening to all of that. I mean, there is a real problem, isn't it, in the political class and the media class, that because most people have come through that route, although, by the way, journalism, not a profession, no qualifications required for that. You know, it used to be something you didn't do, if you didn't go to university for, it wasn't required. But because that's the route they've all gone down, they think that that's what everyone should do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that journalism is a really good example, actually, of this, because I did the NCCJ, right? Professional qualification in journalism. It took me 6 months.
How's your T-line shorthand?
That was the one thing I didn't pass. I know, shocking. But it took me 6 months, cost me about £3,000 in 2011 money, right? And that is a level 6 qualification. An undergraduate degree in journalism, which will cost some poor kid £40,000 in debt, is a level 5 qualification. Yeah. Right? 3 years of their life. Yeah. Sort of almost 7 or 8 times as much money. Right? An undergraduate journalism degree shouldn't exist. And the fact that it does
100% agree with you.
Is a damning indictment of the system.
I could not agree with you more on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but we're going to be getting to the end of the show. 0344 499 1000, you know the number. Just to let you know, there's an urgent question in the House of Commons right now on that Belfast knife attack. We'll bring you what's being said there in just a couple of moments. After the break, we're also going to be talking to the Taxpayers Alliance about, oh, what a surprise, hundreds of civil servants working from the beach abroad and that 28 billion quid of your and my money handed to terrorists, Russian agents, who knows what. And, well, apparently we're not going to do anything about it. In fact, we're lucky to even know about it. That's up next. This is Talk.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. Just to let you know, that is an urgent question in the House of Commons on that attack in Belfast. Local MP has been asking questions. Obviously, lots of sympathies and condolences. Well, not condolences, concern for the victim of that horrific attack. It appeared to be close to an attempted beheading. But the Hilary Benn, who is the Northern Ireland Secretary, has stated that shortly after 10:30 p.m. last night, a man in his 40s was subjected to an horrific sustained knife attack in a street in North Belfast. He is in hospital in a serious condition, having suffered very severe injuries. I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with him and his loved ones. So not much more, of course, that we already had been told. We'll keep you updated on that throughout the rest of the day here at Talk. Ian Collins coming up in a few moments' time. Just want to get to one final guest on the show, and he's Benjamin Elks. He's spokesman with the Taxpayers Alliance. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
2 stories I want to talk to you about. First up, though, the story we've been talking about a lot all morning. There's 28 billion quid that the Telegraph have unearthed, where basically spent by us on foreign aid, COVID loans gone out to, well, not just, dodgy people here doing dodgy claims and not being checked properly by the civil service, but to, ISIS terrorists, to the Russian, hostile nation state, to companies linked to the Chinese military, to gangsters. And apparently, we were never supposed to know about this money going missing. They're not trying to recover it. No one's going to be prosecuted. And we've only found out about it because this secret dossier has been published. It's an absolute outrage that they didn't think that we should know about this horrific waste of our money, isn't it?
It is. It's absolutely extraordinary that we've, as you say, we've seen £28 billion handed out to organisations like Islamic State, to hostile countries, to organised crime, people linked with people trafficking, all sorts of absolutely terrible people have been handed British taxpayers' money. And like you say, the almost sort of part of the worst part of this is that there was then this attempt to cover it up to save political embarrassment. It's an absolute disgrace.
I mean, again, these things have a habit of coming out anyway, do they not? And yet, just absolutely extraordinary that they think this should be covered up. I mean, surely, I know you at Taxpayers Alliance, you look closely at a lot of these, like Public Accounts Committee, Public Accounts Board in investigations. But this stuff should be, this should be reported to us. I mean, this is, in a private company not revealing this, that would be tantamount to fraud, wouldn't it?
You would think. And I mean, like you say, sort of it's quite ridiculous that any government or officials think that they can get away with burying this stuff. It does always come out in the end. But it'd be far better if ministers and officials were just upfront about it when this stuff happens, and then proper safeguards can actually be put in place. We get proper scrutiny of what's going on with the spending. But I mean, it's just a sort of Wild West when it comes to our foreign aid budget.
Well, and again, they're just spending other people's money. That's the trouble, isn't it? Then no one's accountable. Let me also just ask you about, we've done so many stories on this, but this ridiculous situation again and again where hundreds of British civil servants are working from overseas while families are forced to obviously forgo their summer getaways because of the cost of living crisis, as the journalist writing this has pointed out. But the Taxpayers Alliance, your organisation, accused Whitehall bosses of letting officials work from the beach. 350 staff being given permission to clock in from places like Greece and Spain, where apparently they're just on a holiday, but they're allowed to pretend they're working and we're paying their wages. This is an absolute nonsense.
I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are other people who are basing themselves in Australia and Thailand. So we found that there were 359 civil servants based abroad in May. And perhaps most galling of all is 140 of them came from Ed Miliband's Net Zero and Energy Department. The very people who lecture us about taking foreign trips and how awful flying is are flying off to all around the world in order to supposedly work. The
hypocrisy of the Green Law is always, it never ever fails to disappoint, does it? But that is just extraordinary. The thing is, a lot of this is rife in private companies as well. They can do whatever the hell they want. It's up to them and their bosses and their shareholders. But the fact that people in the public sector are being told, yeah, absolutely, you can just go be anywhere you want, pretend you're working when you're actually on the beach all the day. And we know there's barely any checks. You've done numerous reports, and many other bodies have as well. There's just no checks on whether these people are actually getting any sodding work done or not.
Absolutely. And, I think it's a real culture within the civil service. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago that we were talking about how the extraordinary lengths that they were going to in order to dodge going into the office, people rocking up to car parks to connect to the Wi-Fi and then going home. So there's a real problem within the civil service of just trying to get people into the office. It's just unacceptable. I still
fondly remember Jacob Rees-Mogg when he was in the Cabinet Office, but he would just sort of wander around all these empty desks in Whitehall, leave Post-it notes saying, sorry, I missed you. I'm not entirely sure these people get more done when they actually are at their desks, but it's just an absolute joke. And the mass expansion of the civil service is which we're all paying for at a time when we apparently can't afford to have enough people, teaching and doing, police officers. There is a direct impact on us from these things. Benjamin Elks from the Taxpayers Alliance, thank you very much indeed. Henry Hill, I'd love to ask you about this, but we've got breaking news regarding this alleged knife man, this horrific, what appears to be an attempted beheading in Belfast. The police had earlier said the suspect in his 30s, who's been arrested on charges of attempted murder, was from Somalia. They've now confirmed that the alleged knife man is actually Sudanese. So the alleged knifeman in that horrific Belfast attack is Sudanese. He is in custody. Gavin Robinson, Belfast East MP, he's been speaking in the House of Commons along with others, including the Northern Ireland Secretary, taking an urgent question on this. He says the victim, a man in his 40s, he said, belongs in Belfast, but the attacker does not. He said what occurred last night will have profound implications for community cohesion in this country. This needs to be a time for honesty and openness and truth. What do you make of that?
I mean, obviously it's commendable that we're actually getting information relatively quickly this time. And I think one of your callers actually hit the nail on the head. Northern Ireland, there's a whole extra dimension to this, which is that they have alternatives to the police for enforcing, for community enforcement. Ugly, armed, paramilitaries, terrorists on both sides. And it's vitally important that we don't end up with them feeling legitimised to try and step into the breach.
And we talk about, again, let's talk about community cohesion. I mean, our concern is just like peace and order. You know, I don't care whether people like or dislike each other. I don't care whether you feel identified with something. I want to know, are you going to be peaceful on the streets of our country?
It is a phrase that means something slightly different in Northern Ireland, admittedly.
OK. Very, very fair point. Henry Hill, it's been a pleasure having you company. Thank you so much for joining us, political editor at The Critic. We're joined now by Ian Collins. In this video,